Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. This is story about what if Naruto going to the past to rewrite the future, but this time he's not stupid. Part 1. Before I start, please do support for more amazing content and comments for part 2. Do consider to subscribe my channel and share my video to your friends and check out the description as well. Let's start the video. In the forest of the training grounds, all was surprisingly quiet. Teams were working on missions or taking a much needed break in the lull of the moment. To be perfectly honest, there was no better time for the hand from within the water to reach out. Had it been any other time, it surely would have scared the bejesuits out of someone, as like a scene from a horror film, the hand pulled its way up onto the shore and dragged the body it was connected to along with it. The person in question was small, though looking no more than 7 years of age. He threw himself haphazardly on his back, taking calming breaths. Opening large cerulean blue eyes, he stared at the equally blue sky. He was bone tired and his body ached, but that didn't really prevent him from moving. Instead, it was the unbearable emptiness that cascaded over him. The child had lost a lot, but he knew that he would get by, but this emptiness, he wasn't entirely sure. Tears pricked his eyes, and instead of trying to contain it, he decided to let them free fall. He would hardly have time to be this overwhelmed with his sadness after this, so he might as well indulge now. And he did. First just letting the tears fall silently, then he remembered faces and a soft hiccup started. Then as more of the reality of the present and the future settled, he began to bawl. He was being loud and obnoxious as he wailed, tears failing, and he didn't care. He just had to cry. He just wanted to cry in this moment and be sad. And Naruto did. In a 10-year-old body thrown into the past in order to save the world from the terrible future that he had experienced. Naruto sat there and cried. Crap was the first word he said when he finally stopped crying in the midst of darkness. And it was a pretty accurate word considering what he was looking at in the reflection of the water. He was a lot younger than he had thought he would be. He looked like 7, but he knew he was about 12. He had always been on the small side. His features though were a bit softer, not as chubby, and he thought maybe he brought back some of the starvation he had experienced during the war. God, was he hungry. His eyes weren't the same either. They seemed off to him, like they knew too much, and well, that was pretty accurate. Plus they were puffy. He looked like crap. He wasn't sure how. He was hoping he would come back, whether it was his 27-year-old self or even his 12-year-old self, where everything in his life had just begun. How he came back at the age of 10 slightly baffled him, but it couldn't be helped. The time transfer just wasn't even stable, and they weren't even sure if it would work. He washed his face off in the cold water. Dang nabbit, the cold water made his eyes cool down, but his lips reddened, and he could see his features were more feminine than he thought. Well, that sucked. He had become quite manly the last time he looked at himself, and now he regressed. He gave a heavy sigh as he rose to his feet. He was lucky he was in Konoha already, because trying to slip in with no proof of identity would prove difficult. At least he hoped the security was high enough that it proved difficult. But going around on his own would be fairly difficult. He would need a comrade, someone that could give him good advice and who knew this timeline much better, because honestly, even though he knew there was a possibility of using the time transfer jutsu, he didn't exactly like history. He had someone in mind though. Though the time may have changed, to who knew what that person wouldn't change. Naruto was positive that as long as he wasn't thrown that far back, that person would be able to help him, and if he worded things right, the man would be more than willing. The problem was, did he wait until the sun rose and then search out the man, or did he go now where his fight or flight instincts were on high alert? The growling of his stomach seemed to answer his question, and with a foxy grin he ran off. Just barely sleeping. That's how it was nowadays. High-level missions that trained you to just barely sleep. With the war missions had been back-to-back, many of his friends and comrades had fallen already, and he was left to just barely sleep. 23 wasn't young anymore, so no one cared if you didn't fall into a deep sleep or if the nightmares of death haunted you to the point that even closing your eyes was scary. It came with the territory, and if you had lived this long, well, consider yourself blessed. But he really wanted to rest, he just couldn't. His mind was a whirlwind of mess, and he just wished something else would occupy it besides the horrors he was hallucinating. And like an answer to prayer, his barely sleeping managed to pick up on an unfamiliar chakra signature, and it was coming his way. Almost lazily, because on the inside he was as wound up as a spring. He sat up on the bed he had been trying to rest in. Was it an enemy? Were they being invaded? Was his a message? The signature kept getting closer, pulsing slightly as if to tell him something, but he had never gotten a message through chakra. He did not know this person. Naruto landed on the windowsill. The room was as dreary as he pictured it. It was a good thing he remembered the man's chakra signature, because he was not in the mood to search room to room for the man, speaking of whom was hiding quite effectively. Naruto was sure he could easily find him if he stretched out his sensory abilities, but the man was on guard enough, and they need trust. And so, despite knowing that stepping further in would most likely lead to a trap, he had to trust the man first. Trust that he would be willing to hear him out before he handed him over to the Hokage, and things got really complicated. Yeah, he just loved to gamble. So with a deep breath he jumped off the sill, landing gracefully in the center of the room. He felt it instantly, the paralysis that held him captive and the snake-like feeling as the darkness moved up his body. But he didn't move, keeping calm, as he could now tell where the man was and staring into the darkness, watching as the man he had searched for slowly stepped out of the black shadows. And for all the "don't be creepy" chants he had recited on the way over, he couldn't stop the nostalgic smile that graced his feminine features, the way his blue eyes sparkled despite the night. "Well, this is one hell of a greeting," Naruto said as he tilted his head playfully. "But well, it's good to see you alive, Shikaku." Shikaku had never been more confused. In war no one was left innocent. Even children could be used as weapons. Just look at Konoha Genin were also involved in the war these days. It was ludicrous. And it would make sense that they might send someone after him. After all, he was well known for being one of the many tacticians for the village, but this didn't make sense. The boy was too small, too thin to physically win a fight. Even if he had a good amount of chakra, it still wasn't feasible that he was capable of taking out Shikaku Nara, who sometimes went on Anbu missions. No, this was too strange, and if that wasn't strange enough, a young boy who could have been 6 for all that he looked like was stupidly calm. Stupidly because he was clearly captured in enemy territory. What idiot tried to attack Nara among shadows? But here the boy was, after talking to him like they were friends, looking bored and gazing around the room lazily. What was going on? "Look, Shika." He paused, his brow furrowing. "Nah, maybe Kakuye, that sounds better." Did he say boy? He meant brat. Was he seriously getting a nickname? "I'm sure right now I've stunned your brain. And that's cool and kinda funny, but I need you to turn on that rational, logical side and hear me out. I need your help." He sounded as young as he looked, but the look in his eyes were anything but. They were firm and commanding and completely genuine. He had no reason to trust the brat, but blame his Nara curiosity that wanted to know who this child was and how he knew him. He sighed heavily. He wasn't sure if he was going to regret this, but if anything he could kill the brat, and so with that thought he slowly began to release the jutsu. The boy was smart not to move even though the jutsu was off, and Shikaku couldn't help but think maybe the kid wasn't a complete idiot. The kid made a gesture to the bed with his head. "Mind if I sit?" Okay, maybe he wasn't a complete brat, Shikaku thought, putting his hands in his pocket. "I still don't trust you, so I expect a thorough explanation, but go ahead." Give a mouse a cookie, it would seem, because despite the hardened way Shikaku spoke, once the boy heard that it was okay, he flopped down lazily like an old friend coming to visit. "Yeah, I just don't want to have to stand the whole time. Oh. By the way, mind getting me some food? I'm hungry as all get out." Shikaku felt his eye twitch. There was really no redeeming quality about this brat. Rice balls was all he brought, but the kid took them like he hadn't eaten in days, and Shikaku felt a bit of pity. "So good." Food flung out of his mouth, and all the pity and compassion Shikaku felt went out the window. "Look, you have your food now. Tell me, who are you, and why did you come to my room?" The firm tone and concrete gaze sent a noticeable shiver down even the best of men, but to the blonde sitting across from him, he seemed to find it funny, if the smile was anything to go by. "Haku-man." He wiped a grain off his cheek and leaned toward him. "I love a good battle and challenge, and if you keep looking at me like that I'll attack you." A small pink appendage swiped across equally pink lips, and Shikaku literally jumped back, causing the chair he was sitting in to fall backward as well, and drop him to the floor with his face bright red. "WWH, what's wrong with you? TCH, keep it down, Kaku, you want the whole clan to wake up." "It was a joke." The boy said almost tiredly. He never reacted. The boy whispered as he looked out the window at what Shikaku couldn't tell. But Shikaku pulled himself together along with the fallen chair. "My name is Shikaku, not Kaku, and only my friends call me Shika." The blonde turned those seemingly old eyes toward Shikaku again with the same face he had when he had first spoken to him. "I know, but it feels weird to call you Shika since that place is already filled in my head." Shikaku was once again confused, but he wasn't going to brain fart again. He had too much pride for that. "Who are you? And how do you know me?" The boy smiled, taking a breath as if to collect himself, and then his eyes turned to Shikaku. They were not eyes to be questioned or mocked. They were firm, reminding him of a strong and able leader. "My name is Naruto. And I'm from the future." Could one really believe in time travel? It seemed impossible, but Shikaku lived in a world where possible was tested every day. Minato, if he remembered well, had a teleportation jutsu that messed with the fabric of time and space. There were also dijutsus that altered time as well, but time travel. But the child's eyes didn't lie, at least that's what they told him, and logical or not, he felt he had to believe him. "Maybe." "Why?" Naruto looked stunned, then laughed, sounding like delicate bells. "Of course you would accept it. That's good. If you accept this fact as truth, then everything will be easier to explain." Naruto leaned back and Shikaku knew that a story was coming. "In my time, a powerful enemy declared war. Or rather, the Fourth Shinobi War." Shikaku grit his teeth. They were currently in the Third War. How many years of peace would they have before plunged into another bloodthirsty war? "It took a lot, but we managed to subdue him, but he got away." We thought perhaps we might have time to recuperate, but one thing after another happened, and what started as a shinobi war became the first official world war. Naruto's eyes spoke of heavy burdens heavier than the ones he saw on the battlefield, and Shikaku couldn't imagine. Shinobi wars just included ninjas and ninja villages, but a world war? What would that entail? How could everyone bear to fight everyone? Many people were lost. Konoha was slowly fading. It was a last resort, but in order to save my village, going back to rewrite what had happened was looking to be the only way. Wait, your village? Naruto smiled a cheeky smile as sat forward, tilting his head in a look of power. The AI was the 7th Hokage. Shikaku was now officially stunned. If it was taking his brain so long before to comprehend what this boy brat Naruto whatever was telling him before this was incomprehensible. You? Naruto looked as insulted as he felt. Yeah, you bastard, what's with the disbelief, huh? And didn't I tell you to keep it down? Shikaku had to wonder how bad the village had gotten to have made this brat the Hokage, or was he a brat? Wait, how old are you? Naruto smiled at that. Right now 10, don't look at me like that, I know I'm small, bastard, but before casting the time reversal jutsu I was 27. Only 27? How old was I then? They hadn't even elected the 4th Hokage yet, and this boy was supposedly the 7th. How far along was that? No clue, Naruto said sullenly. You died before I became Hokage, you sacrificed for us and I. Shikaku could see the pain in the boy's eyes, and if he was skeptical before, he was now really beginning to believe him. Naruto looked at him with such heartfelt eyes. I can never thank you enough for what you did. Naruto bowed and Shikaku was in utter shock. But then why come to me? Surely there had to be someone out there that would believe him other than him, though it was rather doubtful. At the question, Naruto laughed. My top advisor was Inara, one I trust with my life, and one that learned particularly from you. Shikaku blinked. He didn't have students then. Who? A Shika. Oh. So he was going to have a kid. That wasn't surprising. And his child would serve this brat in the future. And hold up, when you said he never reacted, Naruto raised a brow before it dawned. Oh. Yeah, I used to try messing with him, he was always so serious, but no matter what he didn't seem to react. Naruto laughed and Shikaku felt sorry for the next generation that would have to put up with a Hokage like this. So his son, what happened to him? The air suddenly grew tense and Shikaku froze. There was no more amusement or laughter in Naruto's face. Instead it was cold and dark, and Shikaku felt for a second that he might have stopped breathing. The future will not repeat itself, I made a promise. Even if changing things ends with losing my own existence, I will not allow it to repeat. There was no hesitation, and Shikaku knew that the future they were all fighting for had ended in horror. He didn't understand still why the boy had come to him, but he wasn't going to deny him. There was something about him that seemed to unconsciously command him, making him believe every word he said and want to follow whatever he said. He should have taken him to the Hokage the moment that he captured him, but he now knew that Naruto had chosen him not only because he would believe him, but because he knew the Naras enough that they would ask questions before they shoot. He was undone. He could not unhear what he heard or unsee what he was witnessing. He was now forever bound to this brat and the hell that was bound to follow. Naruto was eating rice balls. He'd rather be eating something else, but to be honest, he had found a love for rice balls. During the war he couldn't exactly have his favorite dish, and when supplies got low, even rice balls were tough to get. The memory made him smile. Soliter pills. Naruto looked up from the documents that he just received to see his top advisor scowling much more than usual with a hand on his hip. The sight made Naruto smile, easing a bit of his exhaustion. He put his elbow up on the desk and leaned his head on it, pulling up quite a sensual smile. You know I love it when you get mad. He licked his lips, his blue eyes sparkled mischievously. It's such a turn on, but the steel-hardened Nara didn't even flinch, now used to the games he played. Instead he stalked forward so he was right at the desk. Naruto, you're the Hokage now and I know supplies are low, but you need to eat, we need you strong and thinking straight. Naruto couldn't help but smile. Shika, it's fine, we'll be getting a more supply. It's not fine. His fist slammed into the table, but Naruto kept calm. It's not fine. You always do this, sacrificing yourself. Shikamaru was hurt and Naruto knew it, but he could only do so much. Shika, what should I do? Shikamaru looked at Naruto, his friend and now Hokage. The hidden tears could be seen clearly by those all-seeing blue eyes. Advise me. Shikamaru looked away to reach into his pocket and pull out wrapping. He peeled away the foil as if it would break if he was too hurried, and inside the wrapping was a delicately made rice ball. Eat, he said, holding it out. Just eat it so your stupid brain has enough energy to think properly. Naruto took the rice bowl blankly, but then a cheeky smile spread because he knew he wasn't the only one hiding things. Shikamaru looked more tired than usual, and he looked a bit thinner because in all honesty Shikamaru wasn't the physical fighter type, so malnourishment showed more on him. In other words, Naruto wasn't the only one eating soldier pills. I see. Shikamaru looked at the blonde as he turned the rice bowl flippantly, and then with a quickness that Shikamaru could never dream of keeping up with, the said rice bowl was shoved into his mouth. Shikamaru almost choked but was forced to swallow involuntarily. In that case you eat it so your stupidly smart brain can think of ways for this not to happen again. Shikamaru glared at the man who all but laughed at him. Don't worry so much, you'll age faster, the supplies will be here tomorrow morning, bear with me alright. Shikamaru scowled, but he was smart enough, he knew when he had lost. Whatever. Naruto smiled, that bright smile that drew people in. And it kinda pissed him off. Just to let you know, that rice bowl was hella good. Shikamaru watched in satisfaction as Naruto's smile fell. Really? He whined. Shikamaru smiled. Minato had made it specially for you. Now Naruto's face paled. No way. The memory was one of the few that made him smile during the war. It had been tough, yes, but not everything was bad. Still, it wasn't a future he wanted to repeat. He sighed. He was so bored. After telling Shikaku that he needed to get into the ninja system, he had come up with a plan, leave it to Nara, but he needed to wait to implement his part. And the waiting was killing him. He would have been less bored if he could have chilled out on the Nara's bed, but said Nara had said, like hell, I'm gonna let you stay here by yourself. And when a Nara starts saying hell, he's pretty pissed. So that's why Naruto was hanging around the village eating a rice ball that he had made Shikaku get him this morning. But damn, was he bored, and for Shikaku to tell him to wait, he obviously didn't know how Naruto rolled. Naruto sighed. He walked down the road heading to a place so familiar to him. It would surely look different, and he was counting on that. It felt like it had been forever since he had last been to the shop, but he sourly missed, and as he turned the corner he could almost feel the tears. Ikuchi was a lot younger than he thought he should be, but people still gathered around the humble abode, indulging in the food that even now made his mouth water. And just when he contemplated stealing a bite cause he had no money, he saw her. And God, was she beautiful. She was more beautiful than he remembered, slightly younger, but not by much, with gorgeously long hair that burned like fire. And had Ino been here in this moment, she would have scolded him and diagnosed him with Oedipus complex, saying that he was being a mama's boy and that he needed to calm down before he actually ruined anything, because despite how he was feeling, the woman in question didn't give two hoots about him. But he didn't care. Cause she had said she loved him and always would, and he would never forget that. But it wasn't her who noticed him first, rather the woman she had been talking to happily. And bloody hell. Was that Sasuke's mom? Now he could see where Sasuke got his good looks from. He flashed Mikoto a sly smile. It was only then that she turned to him and he felt his heart skip a beat. Mikoto spoke something to her, and whatever it was made her turn to him with a glare. And then without much thought she stomped over Mikoto in tow. Boy. What are you looking at, Databane? He tried to hide his smirk, but it came out anyway. Her bright eyes blinked in confusion, and Naruto realized had it bad. Sorry, I just thought you were both so beautiful I should engrave the sight in my memory. Oh my. Mikoto covered her mouth in shock as Kushina's face went red. But let's face it, Naruto had learned from the best, and he had a lot more where those came from. A chuckle sounded and then a full-blown laugh, but Naruto was undeterred. In fact, it felt like mission accomplished. Wow kid, you're pretty smart, Databane. Naruto couldn't stop smirking. Yeah, well, you're pretty sexy, Databeo. Both faces went red, and though it shouldn't because it was a little child, there was something about his eyes that was quite provocative and adult. Ouch. She had a heavy hand, that was for sure. Where did you learn things like that? He shouldn't stay much longer. Waiting for Shikaku's signal was going to take forever, and sooner or later Shikaku would learn why you don't tell Naruto of all people to wait. Look, baby cakes, I'd love to stay and flirt some more, but I have other engagements. He gave them a cute wink. But hey, call me if your man ain't doing it for you. And with that he disappeared before he could hear her scream. That was one way to meet your mother. Are you sure about this? Shikaku had to take deep calming breaths so that his language stayed appropriate for the situation. Yes, Hokage, I had been talking to the elders this morning about the proposition, and if I had your approval it would go well. If he had more time things would have gone better, but leave it to his luck that the Hokage had to bloody call him in the midst of his freaking meeting because an Impadian Mother. Well, I don't see why not. Naruto seems like a good boy. The criminal in question stood beside him, never looking more innocent. Thanks, Gigi. Damn that brat. He had told him to wait as he was going to discuss it with the clan elders, so when he talked to the Hokage things would go smoothly, but no. Why would things go the way he wanted? Thank you, Lord Hokage, he said with a bow. The Hokage just smiled, unaware of the Nara's dark thoughts. No thank you, despite this war there is still kindness being shown. It warms my heart. All Shikaku could do was smile, though he was tempted to wipe that cheeky smirk off the blonde next to him. I could have done it too. The yell was excruciatingly loud if they heard it through the door, and all in the room looked at it as the door was shoved open. I didn't need your help, Obito. Look where you're going. The spiky-haired Uchiha looked up only to just realize that he had walked into the Hokage's office without permission, and the Hokage wasn't alone. Minato sighed at the action. Ah. I'm so sorry. The Hokage chuckled, but Shikaku could only curse his luck more. Ah, Shikaku, were you having a meeting? I apologize for my genin's behavior. Shikaku sighed lazily as he looked at the teacher. No problem, I was done any bloody hell. Why hadn't he noticed this before? If his future son worked under him, then surely Naruto's parents must be in his generation, and who else would have blonde hair and blue eyes? Is something wrong, Shikaku? No. He said, catching himself. How would Naruto feel meeting his father? If he had died before he became Hokage, what about Minato? He stole a quick glance, but Naruto wasn't paying attention to the man of his own blood. Instead, he seemed to look past him to the three ninjas behind him. Are they ninjas too? The question sounded too childlike for Shikaku to take him seriously, but apparently the Hokage thought it innocent. As a matter of fact, they are Obito, Rin and Kakashi are Chunin, and Minato is their teacher. Shikaku knew Naruto wasn't the least bit interested if anything he knew about them, but why was he? That's so cool, can I be a ninja? Everyone in the room looked fairly shocked except for Kakashi, who was glaring at the young boy. I'm sorry, but you are. Minato said cautiously, looking at the boy that had amazingly many of the same features as him. The kid smiled, unspoken challenge in his eyes. Name's Naruto. Minato looked even more confused by the determination in the child's eyes. This is Naruto. He was an orphan, but Shikaku has decided to take him in. The Hokage said. Minato turned to Shikaku, surprised. When had the lazy Nara ever had an interest of becoming daddy long legs? Wow, I'm impressed since we're still young, you know. Shikaku chuckled. Nothing, that noble honest eye just took one look at him and couldn't say no. As he turned to the young future Hokage, chanting in his head. No, no, no. Hey Gigi. Of all the disrespectful things that he could possibly say, make me a ninja too. Hell no. The Hokage laughed at the innocent enthusiasm. Naruto, I can't just make you a ninja, we have a system. Naruto gave a, dare he think it, cute pout, his pink lower lip popping out and his large blue eyes looking downcast. I bet I could do it, I'm tough too, you know. It was practically insulting to hear someone talk about their life work so lightly, but Shikaku had seen the darkness and despair that knew what being a ninja really meant last night, so he knew that Naruto wasn't just speaking flippantly. Unfortunately, the others in the room didn't. Tough. Came the cold voice, and you didn't have to guess where the heated glare was coming from. You think being a ninja is easy? Kakashi growled as he looked at the brat in front of him. The kid was too small to be a threat or to take seriously, but honestly he felt insulted. You couldn't even tell the brat's gender with how feminine he looked, and he thought all you had to be was a little tough. Can you really put your life on the line? Shikaku looked at the calm look on Naruto's face. He had thought that if he was going to use this persona he would react, but instead Naruto looked at the older boy calmly, too much like an adult that clearly had all the experience and more that he needed. Because the Naruto that had come from the future had put his life on the line. Can you kill your emotions for the sake of a job? Probably more than even himself. Naruto, who had lived through World War, had probably killed many things including his heart just to not go crazy. Can you say you're willing to take a life just because you're ordered? Shikaku watched in awe as Naruto's eyes closed and then opened back up, harshly glaring back at the gray-haired child. If it was to protect those precious to me, I could do all that and more. The room stilled because he hadn't yelled it, rather he said it soft and with such authority that you didn't doubt the words he said rang true. You really know how to pick them, huh, Shikaku? The Hokage smiled and all Shikaku could do was sigh. How the hell did he get in this mess? Kakashi was beyond pissed. Who did that brat think he was? He looked at being a ninja as a glorified hero and then acted like he could do whatever they did but better. Kakashi kicked a nearby tree, cracking the bark a bit. Damn him. He never felt so insulted. If it were that easy, everyone would be a freaking ninja. They'd all prance around happily without a care in the world, singing the Konoha anthem and living the dream. He kicked the tree again, making the bark crack further. Ninjas wouldn't have PTSD or go through depression. No ninja would ever take their own. He grit his teeth, now slamming his foot into the bark repeatedly. He couldn't stop, not until this anger cooled, and it did eventually, but only because of exhaustion. He slumped to the ground, breathing heavily with sweat pouring down his brow. That kid, with bright blonde hair and blue eyes that initially reminded him of a clear sky. He didn't know why he was so bothered, maybe because he looked like the teacher he idolized, he wasn't sure, but that kid pissed him off. He sighed, pulling himself up off the ground. Who knew, maybe if he was lucky he would never have to see the brat again. I really don't see this ending well. Shikaku felt a tick cross his forehead. Look, you little, I mean Naruto, if you want to be a ninja, then you need someone to vouch for your potential. I don't know how strong you were in your time. I became Hokage. Naruto deadpanned as if that was all that was needed to say, and Shikaku felt another tick of irritation pop up. Though it was true he had to be significantly strong to be Hokage, the fact was he was in a 6-10-year-old body right now. He most likely wasn't nearly as strong as he was before. Needless to say, if anything, that's why we're in the Nara forest. No one will know if you go all out here. Naruto raised a brow, and Shikaku swore he was thinking, could you handle it if I went all out? And that was the other hidden agenda. After making it back to the elders and explaining the Hokage's take, it had taken a bit longer to convince them, because they thought as the clan leaders, they had a right to know what happened to the clan before the Hokage, which is why he set up the plan the way he did, which Naruto ruined. It took a hit to his pride to finally convince them to let the boy in under his care, but he had done it, and now, he wanted payback. Some stress relief. If he could just smack the kid around and let him know that even though he was Hokage in his time, he wasn't here, that would be a victory. Naruto sighed as he stretched a bit. Whatever Kaku man, I don't mind a little exercise. Dick. Alright, forget smack around, he was going to beat this kid into a bloody pulp. Cause I want to see all your skills, Shikaku said, pulling out 2 kunai and twirling them dangerously yet gracefully before holding them expertly. Anything goes. Naruto raised a brow again, but reached leisurely into the pouch Shikaku had lent him, also pulling out a kunai and turning it if not a bit faster before he tossed it up into the air. Alright Kaku. He snatched the kunai mid-full almost lazily and dropped his arm, not even getting into stance. Show me what you got. It was after the quick step into his space, the smirk and the instant reaction time that Shikaku felt lost. This wasn't a normal fight. A normal fight between a Jounin level ninja and a 10-year-old usually ended in a pity fight with nicely sported bruises on fragile skin. This wasn't like that. Naruto hadn't even attacked yet, just sidestepping and redirecting his power ever so gracefully that Shikaku looked like an uncoordinated buffoon. And it was bizarre because though repeated too many times to count by now, Naruto was so slight. In theory Shikaku should have easily overpowered him, there was no way arms that thin and legs so short could. Shikaku jumped back as soon as it dawned on him, and at the notion Naruto grinned devilishly. What did you think, I wouldn't be able to hold my own? Chakra, the damn brat was using chakra. Despite his slight figure with proper chakra control, he could easily overcome that barrier, but the amount of chakra control that was needed so that it wouldn't backfire on him was unbelievable. You know, when I was younger my chakra control wasn't worth dog crap, but one of my teammates drilled it into me as I got older. A nostalgic smile running over his young face. I can't thank her enough. Shikaku didn't want to hear it, the kid was still taking the fight too lightly. With another quick step he was in the young boy's field again, but it seemed pointless. The brat was amazingly agile and flexible, his short size should have been hindering him, but the kid seemed unperturbed and looked like he using this fight to test his new body. Freaking hell. Kunai clashed and Shikaku managed to overpower Naruto enough to send him back, only to realize that Naruto had jumped back on purpose, landing on the trunk of the tree gracefully. Damn his chakra control to hell. And just when he thought that he would spring back he was caught off guard as the boy jumped high in the air above him. He watched the boy spin dangerously, gaining momentum and velocity, and a leg come out as if he were going to bring down an axe. And Shikaku was right under him. He had plenty of time to block, and if he did he could grab a hold of the little hellion. But what he thought was different than his body's reaction, because without confirmation his body leaped back out of range. Crack. Wide eyes was all he could do as his mouth slowly fell. Maybe it was the Nara's cat-like instinct that had warned him, but had he tried to block that his arms would have surely broken, because anything that cracked the earth and left a crater in its wake wasn't exactly light. For once Shikaku felt he hadn't thought this through. Was it his fault that he was a bit skeptical of what the kid had said? That he hadn't exactly believed that he could have been Hokage? But looking at the child now he felt a shiver of fear. This child may still have the chakra control and even ninjutsu that he had in the future, but how much stronger would he have been if he really was 27? Thin arms toned with muscles, those adult-like eyes connected with not a cute but handsome adult-like face. There were already times when sometimes Shikaku was stunned by the authority in Naruto's voice. How much more power would he have if he was at his full potential? It only just dawned on him that this was not a normal child. That standing in front of him was not just a 10-year-old time traveler. This was the future Hokage, son of Minato, the yellow flash of Konoha and Kushina. This was the 7th Hokage. Naruto smiled as if he could read his thoughts, and it made Shikaku's brow furrow. Okay, so now he officially believed the brat could possibly be who he said he was, but still the kid was just that, a brat. He was not going to chicken out of this fight just yet. Plus he was a tactician. Since the moment this fight started he had a plan for the kid's takedown. Sure, plans A, B, C, and D just went out the window, but that was what plan E was for. Shikaku leapt forward in attack and Naruto's eyes widened. He felt a somewhat sick satisfaction that he had surprised the kid. Did he think he was gonna just give up? Now he was kinda pissed. Did his son usually give up? When he had his kid he'd make damn sure that the kid was strong and never gave up, especially if he was gonna have to deal with a Hokage like this. Further and further Shikaku pressed him, but how the hell did this kid have so much stamina? Good thing he wasn't going to plan F because he was already sweating too much and his breathing was beginning to sound heavy. And with effort and never-ceasing prayer, he managed to push Naruto further back, who was looking too calm and amused for his taste. Just a little more. Shadow Precision Jutsu. Naruto was frozen and he looked down. He had been weary to stay just out of the shadow's reach, but Shikaku wasn't a Nara just cause of his good looks. 2 kunai with ninja wire stretch a shadow apparently long enough for Shikaku to reach his. Naruto smiled, a similar tactic to the one Shikamaru used during the Chunin exams, except better prepared and more stealthy. Guess he wasn't dad for nothing. Hell. Shikaku huffed, trying to catch his breath. Finally got you bastard. Naruto chuckled. That's some crude language you got there, Kaku. Shikaku wasn't amused as he watched his captive stare at the shadow holding him. His eyes glazed in what might have been a memory. Did someone else capture him like this? Was it his son? You know, Shika did something similar. So he had been right. Shika something was his son and he caught him too, but why did that thought concern him? It was a lot easier then, but the unease grew. What could he be talking about? Did he get out of his son's shadows? There was no way, either his son had to be rather weak or he had to be abnormally strong, neither of which he could believe. Well, even without that I'm sure. Blue eyes locked on his and he refused to think anymore. Raising the kunai in his hand he dashed forward, not sure how he was going to end this, but he had a feeling if he didn't move he'd lose. If he didn't work fast. Kunai clashed and Shikaku cursed. The jutsu wasn't broken yet by the way that Naruto's arm trembled, but the fact he could move enough to defend himself. Shikaku pushed harder and saw the deepened brow on the young boy's forehead. He could do this. He could win. But Naruto closed his eyes, his breathing slowed, and Shikaku felt more dread than he had ever felt on the battlefield. Orange. Or reddish orange. It looked like eyeshadow as it spread over his lids like it had a will of its own. Long blonde lashes opened, and now he really looked like a girl, but Shikaku couldn't focus as the once cerulean blue eyes were now golden brown, and what should have been a round black pupil like most humans was horizontal like a goat or toad. What the hell? The jutsu was shattered instantly, and with a flick of Naruto's almost dainty wrist Shikaku went soaring, slamming painfully into a tree that must have been a good 7 meters away. What the hell? It took a while, but Shikaku finally could breathe again. Naruto was hovering over him like he hadn't been the one to almost kill the man. How I? Still trying to catch his breath, he didn't even know where to start, but thank goodness Naruto wasn't as dumb as he made him out to be. Oh. That last one. Natural energy. I felt going sage mode would get rid of that nasty jutsu of yours. Naruto smiled happily. I was a bit worried I wouldn't be able to get into it, but it all worked out I guess. Sage mode. Sage freaking mode. That crap was only done by Sannin level ninjas. Shikaku threw his head back. Bloody hell. Naruto was bored again. Don't get him wrong, he enjoyed the past. It was much more peaceful than what he felt in the future, and it was significantly different. It should have paraded the streets with pride and authority as did Hyugas in strict competition. The people he saw, some of which he remembered from his time, looked younger, and it made him laugh. Then there was Ichiraku Ramen. He wanted to go in, honest he did. Wanted to go in, have a couple of bowls, chat and laugh, but he couldn't. He didn't remember when Tucci died. It brought a wave of guilt through him each time he thought of it. The man had been so dear to him and one of the few that cared when he was younger, but he couldn't remember when it had happened or how. So much had happened it had slipped past. He couldn't even mourn properly cause the mystery of it all had him feeling lost. He did remember some of the regulars, though one in particular made his heart clench as the young boy sat between his parents, laughing happily, his brown hair up in a style that reminded him of some crude and lazy jerk. He frowned his death, he remembered. Protecting younger Genin because it was just in his personality. The current sight burned his eyes and he had to look away. He hadn't heard the news right away, Shikamaru had hid it away, but someone mentioned something and then all hell broke loose. He had cried for days, not wanting to do anything, feeling absolutely worthless because he couldn't protect such an important person to him. He didn't protect Iruka. He had help though, that person had guided him, making him forget if not for a little bit, reminding him they were in a war, that there was no time for mourning now that, well, he had hated that person for a plethora of reasons after that, but he had gotten through it thanks to them. Naruto sighed, walking away. He had told Shikaku that he needed to get in the ninja rooster, or more specifically, he needed to get into Minato's team. Why? Shikaku asked. He had seen the way that Naruto had looked at the young Chunin, were they important to the ruined future he was trying to prevent? Something is going to happen, I need to be on the team when it does. Of course Shikaku had said he was an idiot if he thought out of some miracle that he was going to be put on an upper class team when he hadn't even been in the academy yet. Considering his story was he was a homeless orphan who would believe he just knew how to make 200 shadow clones out of instinct. The thought made him smile since Shikaku kept shooting down all his ideas and calling him a strange number of uncouth names. Naruto had demonstrated how many shadows he could make in a friendly spar. Served the bastard right. But Naruto really was going stir crazy. He didn't know when exactly they would go on their A-rank mission, but he knew he had to be there, and that was what he had been preparing for. Every day since happily bumping into the team in the Hokage's room, he had been trying to get close and get as much information out as possible. The biggest question had been who to choose. Minato. The dude may come to like him, but he had no desire to get close. After all, he was a rival in Kushina's affections, and he didn't wish to get closer to the guy more than he had to. Kakashi? Hell no. Kakashi had mentioned that he was similar to Sasuke when he was younger, but damn, they could have been twins. And as much as he loved a good challenge and wanted the person who may be his future teacher again to acknowledge him, he had long outgrown that attention whore personality trait and was quite fine keeping a good 10 feet between them until Kakashi got that stick out his ass. As for Obito, Naruto had also outgrown his forgive everyone trait too, because just seeing the kid made him want to slit his throat. For all the trouble that spiral bastard had put him through, he had half a mind to kill him now and burn the body so it could never be used again. But he had to remind himself there was a better option maybe. It was Rin he had decided on. Kakashi of his time had mentioned her a few times when he finally felt comfortable enough. And she was everything he had said and more. Gentle, strong-willed, smart. She was wonderful and he'd be damned if he didn't find a way to save her. So she was the one he leeched on, sensing her out each day and then accidentally bumping into her. And every time he did, he'd bluntly ask her if she got any cool missions yet. After all, being subtle wasn't a trait he had picked up just yet. And that's how it went day after day, time wasting and running out on him and him not getting closer to changing anything. Naruto was once again strolling the streets of Konoha aimlessly as he finished up the rice ball in his hands. He usually spent the morning in strict training. Shikaku could barely keep up, but after that he was bored. They were still working on paperwork to get him into the academy, and Shikaku had said that if he played his cards right, he could pretend he was a prodigy and graduate early. But god did he hate school. Maybe he should go find Kushina today. Teasing her had become a new pastime, and after he made a point to say that he looked a bit like Minato, she always blushed when he came around. Using Minato's name left a sour taste in his mouth, but Kushina's cute blushing face, totally worth it. Just then brown hair and familiar chakra pasted his peripheral. He smiled as he ran around the corner to catch up. Rin. Wait up, Rhode Island. There were few things he regretted in life, but he could add this to the list because he really should have used his sensory abilities to definitely make sure that way he wouldn't bump into the one he had called out to, but not her obnoxious teammates as well. Naruto could wait until she was alone. His face dropped as Rin and the others noticed him. Ah. You. Obito shouted as he shoved a finger at him, one he was sure he could cut off fast enough. You. The cold voice and glare, but he wasn't expecting much more. Hey Naruto, it seems I just can't get away from you. She laughed good-natured. He was sure she caught onto him following her, but she was a good sport and let it go, and it made him smile. Hey Eren, I didn't expect to see you here. You know you have to be careful. I would hate for your beauty to attract bad company. He said, pointed looking at the other teammates, one of which seemed to grasp his meaning and glared deeper the other. Wait, are you flirting with Rin? He really was too innocent to kill this young, no matter how tempting it was. Kakashi rolled his eyes, then turned and walked off. Oh Kakashi, I'll see you tomorrow. Rin called despite being ignored. It didn't take a genius to see how much she liked him, but he was glad she wasn't as love-struck as Sakura had been. She didn't kick others to the side for him and seemed to care equally for Obito, even if the bastard deserved to die. So Rin. Naruto started getting her attention. Going on any cool missions yet? Rin sighed. Naruto, you always ask me that and I keep reminding you the harder the mission, the tougher the risk. As young Chunin, we're lucky to be going on easy missions right now. She seemed honest and he appreciated it, but he was peeved. When were they going to go on their freaking mission? I know, but still you seem so strong, Rin. It must be some other reason that you get stuck on so many D-rank missions. Obito fumed. At least he got that one. What was that, you brat? I'll have you know in a couple of days we're going on an A-rank mission. Obito. Honest as a demon it would seem, the girl could lie, that was for sure. Perhaps it was some will of a higher power that he also bumped into the future mass murderer who couldn't keep his mouth shut. Rin, you weren't gonna tell me? He pretended to pout. Rin sighed. Look Naruto, I'm just concerned being a ninja isn't as light as you make it. The understatement of the year, but he let her continue. We put our lives on the line, ready to die for our village. I wasn't going to tell you because I was worried you might want to get involved. Naruto deadpanned. Well duh. Rin sighed as Obito looked flabbergasted. Look kid. Rin just wants to keep you safe. How old are you anyway? 5. Naruto's eye twitched. Why did it seem his age was getting younger? I'm 10, thank you. No way. Even Rin looked shocked. How old are you, huh, big brother? The words almost sounded like he spit them out. I'm 13. And I'll have you know I'm going to be the next Hokage. Now that felt nostalgic. Naruto can't remember how long it had been since he said that same phrase. Perhaps there was hope for this guy yet. I'm 12 actually, as is Kakashi. Obito just has an earlier birthday. Hey. Anyway, Naruto, Rin said, getting serious again. Ninja is not just a game, especially now in this time of war. She put her hand on his head and her eyes looked sorrowful. Don't try and be reckless. You're being reckless. Honestly, when was Naruto not being reckless? I have no choice. Shikaku was more than a little livid. After all, Naruto was not going to keep this a secret. So when he told him he was going on the A-rank mission with Team Minato, the reaction he received was expected. How do you expect this to go? Because I am sure as hell they didn't invite you, so what, you're gonna follow them? Naruto sighed as he sat back on the bed. This is a very critical point in all three of their lives. I need to be there to make sure what should happen happens and what shouldn't doesn't. Shikaku groaned. Do you hear yourself? You're going to go and what, save them? With what abilities? Oh yeah, your sage ones. You think that will go well? Tell me how well behind the jail bars as that Ibiki brat is testing out who knows what on you. That made Naruto blink. Was Ibiki young now? He was sure he was an old fart even now. That was surprising. but he shook off the thought. I know that, that's why I need your advice. As for getting captured, I have too much to do to get captured now, so unless they send at least 5 of their top ninja including Jiraiya, they'll be hard pressed. Shikaku glared at the boy, so he really was holding back much more during their spars. Damn brat. Shikaku ran a heavy hand over his face. If we can just inform the Hokage somehow, maybe he can send backup, me included, if it will help ease some worry. No. Shikaku frowned. He was aging twice as fast as everyone, he guaranteed. Naruto was being too stubborn. They couldn't tell anyone else just yet, and their timeline wasn't clear, not to mention he refused to tell Shikaku any details of the future he was trying to destroy. Shikaku had finally deduced it after subtly asking Inochi that the main reason that Naruto may have come to him was because he simply didn't want to be alone. Because keeping a secret all by yourself was damn hard. Why not? It's our best option and might benefit us in the long run. It won't. Naruto sighed like an old man with the weight of the world on his shoulders. Shikaku felt for the kid man, whatever he was, he really did. This mission is like a double-edged sword. On one side hope, life, and light that will guide them to be stronger and lead them to the valuable ninjas this village needs when it seems like this village is experiencing darkness. Though he said this, Shikaku didn't see the hope in Naruto's eyes. Instead was a tiredness that he saw sometimes when the third Hokage let the weight of the war affect him. On the other side, a chill ran down Shikaku's back as he watched Naruto's eyes darken dangerously, his lip curled revealing demonic canines, and he almost looked feral enough to kill anything that moved. Death, the beginning of the end. Hatred that breeds more hatred and lies that never end and manipulate the innocent. What was the future like? What had happened? What had this person seen, heard and experienced? Was the future always this delicate that one incident could consequently destroy a village, no, the world? Shikaku looked down and took a deep breath. I'm assuming you've been stalking some of the members of Minato's team to even get that information. Luz looked up with a sparkle of hope, and Shikaku knew that Inochi had been right. I have a mission starting tomorrow. I'll do my best to finish quickly. Is there any way that you can change the future without being seen? Naruto looked to the side and thought. Yes, but let's say no cause I will allow myself to be seen. Shikaku rubbed his brow. Fine, then at least keep a low profile. No ninjutsu, sage or clones. Maybe the little they see the better we can cover it up. Naruto nodded, soaking up everything that was said like a sponge. Maybe it won't be too bad, if anything say I taught it to you. The brow lifted. Just say it. Shikaku turned to the bed and landed heavily, making the small boy bounce a bit. I'm sorry. Naruto looked confused at the sudden confession. I believe in you, but it all seems backwards. Ah. So he felt guilty. Naruto closed his eyes. I just can't see things the way you do, Shikamaru said, leaned against the window, refusing to look at him as he wrapped his arms around himself as if he might fall apart. I believe in you, but teeth clenched, but he had to hide the hurt that went through him. Then leave. Shikamaru's head had never whipped around so fast as he watched his longtime friend now Hokage stand from his chair picking up some documents. What? Cerulean eyes that were usually warm were frozen with a glare so frightful Shikamaru had to lean hard against the window so his legs wouldn't give out. I don't have the time to nurse your insecurities, Nara. The word was more distant than he had ever thought possible. We're in a war and I have people dying. Naruto walked briskly, crossing the room almost instantly, so he hung over Shikamaru with his tall height. A heavy fist slammed into the window beside him and Shikamaru visibly flinched. People I love are dying. Blood dripped in the silence, but no one acknowledged it. Naruto turned from him. If you can't follow me, leave. I can't always explain things to you, so either you trust me 100% or you don't trust me at all. Shikaku's eyes hardened. I'm not there yet, but even still. Determination flashed in dark eyes. I will stand with you. Naruto smirked. Had Shikamaru left that day? No. He too said with that same look. I don't see things the way you do, but I will stand with you. He wondered if he had gone further back in time and he met the Naras before them, would they act the same? Probably. Because once a Nara let you into their life, they were loyal for life. Rin gave one last wrap to the wound. It's pretty much healed completely now. But if you overdo it, the wounds will open. Kakashi flexed his arm to test. Alright, okay, let's head off. Minato said as his team chorused their affirmation. It wasn't until they were further into the forest that Minato stopped. From here we split into 2 groups, everyone do your best. It was only by chance that the enemy yesterday was scouting alone. From now on it'll be team battles, take care. The team were ready after yesterday's scare, they wouldn't make the same mistake. Let's get going, Commander. Kakashi's eyes widened as he turned to a pouting Uchiha. Rin was equally shocked, only Minato knew the true meaning of the words, but let it slide. Right, let's go. The new team stood at attention. Okay. Scatter. Where the hell were they? Naruto groaned, he was sounding like Kaku the longer he stayed with the jerk. But at the moment Kaku was on a mission and he was deep in the forest not too far from the bridge. But he had no idea where Kakashi and his team were, not that he was in a hurry to find them. First Rin needed to be captured so that Kakashi and Obito could go at it and Kakashi could learn the real meaning of being a ninja. But he couldn't miss when the rocks came crashing, or he could find he'd saved the bastard. But the problem was that he really didn't know where they were. That was a much bigger problem. He had wanted to trail them the moment that they left, but he had no idea when they were leaving and wasn't sure if he had left early or late, most likely early if Kakashi had been honest when he said that Obito's tardiness had been worse than his. Seriously, where the hell were they? The most important thing to a ninja is to be a tool in order to complete the mission. Emotions are unnecessary things. Shock didn't even describe the feeling in Obito as he stared at the person he had been trying to understand. Are you serious? Kakashi's face didn't change as he stared at Obito head on. Do you seriously think like that? Kakashi could almost see the back of his father and remembered all the things he had said and did, but in end what good had all that preaching done? Yes, that's right. Obito scowled. Fine then, from the beginning you and I were like water and oil. I'm going to rescue Rin. Obito shoved past him, and at this point Kakashi knew there was no point in trying to stop him. You don't understand anything. What happens to those who don't follow the rules? I believe the White Fang is a true hero. Time seemed to stop for Kakashi. Of course, those in the ninja world who break the rules and regulations are called trash, but Kakashi's world was shattering and he saw Obito glance back. Those who don't care about their companions are worse trash. Anyway, if I'm that kind of trash, I'll break the rules. If that's not being a true ninja. Obito grit his teeth but continued to walk away. Then I'll crush that idea of a ninja. Damn it. Why is the Jinjutsu not working? Well, that was simple, because even though Naruto sucked exponentially at Jinjutsu, he had been under enough to at least build a tolerance, and anything less than a Uchiha Sharingan was practically ineffective. But the better question was, where was he now? Captured, actually. After wandering hoping to catch a glimpse of the Chunin, he had been spotted by a scout, and that was the end of that. He was going to keep his promise, no ninjutsu, sage mode or anything that might give him away. So he was sitting not sure what to do now. Hey, I heard the battle in the east is almost ours. Aim another Iwa ninja from who knows where. Of course, as if Konoha can beat us. His captors laughed. He really had nothing against Iwa ninja. Maybe when he was younger the passion and pride for anyone bad-mouthing Konoha would have made him burn their ears. But the future had opened up his mind to the chains and circle of hate and hurt. Just as Konoha suffered, so was Iwa. Hey. Another Iwa appeared. What was this hangout spot? Heard the group by the lake caught one of the ninjas. They're going to extract info from her. Naruto's eyes darkened. Rin, but we probably won't get anything from this kid anyway. They nodded as they started filtering out. Get rid of him and catch up. The guy who had been attempting the weak Jinjutsu nodded as the cave emptied. Then he turned to the young boy who had been amazingly quiet. Look, don't hold this against me. I don't hate kids, but I have to do my job. He raised a kunai and Naruto raised a brow before he sighed. Me too, you know. The Iwa looked shocked as the boy, who had not uttered a peep since they saw him in the forest, spoke for the first time. I have nothing against Iwa, but I have a job to do too. The ninja didn't even see the clone standing behind before it was too late, and then just like that, with a singular movement, the enemy was down. Naruto didn't waste much time speeding through the forest. Rin was captured. That meant that Obito would die soon. If only. Naruto stopped. All Naruto really needed to do was make sure Obito died. The fact that he hadn't was exploited by that Madara bastard. But it would ease him a bit. Obito had caused so much grief to all of his friends, to the future Jinchuriki, to even reanimated corpses. He couldn't see any redeeming quality about Obito that was worth saving. I'm worried about you. Naruto blinked at the beautiful interrogator. Is this new code for you want to sleep with me? Or what? Cause I'm confused. Ino scowled. No, stupid. I mean, I'm genuinely worried about you. Naruto was still confused. So you don't want to sleep with me? Ino huffed in exasperation. You smile too much, even now you make jokes. Shika says you're taking things very seriously, but even then you keep looking at the bright side. Naruto honestly would never understand women no matter what Jiraiya had taught him. I can't understand how you do it despite losing so much. Ino looked downcast. You're human, right? How do you not go crazy with all the hate around you? Everyone is leaning on you, so who are you leaning on? Now he got it. She wondered why he wasn't just slaughtering everyone that crossed his path, why he was still trying to reach people, even those that had killed someone precious. She was good at reading people, but he assumed that he was her greatest challenge. Well, I could always use someone to warm the bed with, he said warmly, and he had succeeded because she flashed a small smile. I just worried that at this rate you might break, and if you don't then you've just been dangerously good at hiding it. And she was right, of course. He was great at hiding it. He would rather just kill everyone and live with the fact that at least none of them would have to face the horror of the future, and killing Obito would be a great start in his own opinion. I'm going to be the next Hokage. The phrase rang through his brain. Kakashi had never hated Obito, he had respected him and even said that perhaps he could have become Hokage. And if that was the case, he wasn't a bad person. Naruto was just blinded by what he himself had seen. Maybe he should give him a chance. The thought made him smirk. Obito, who later became the Ten Tails, becoming the next Hokage. The first Uchiha Hokage. Wait. If he did become Hokage, what would that mean? Would the Uchiha's thirst for power be quenched? In that case, would that halt the Uchiha massacre? This is why he needed Inara, because he never thought this far so many lives would be saved, so many. Naruto opened his eyes. He had said he wouldn't go into sage mode, but let's face it, he had large chakra reserves. Gathering large amount of chakra within his body and coiling it inside like a tight spring, he took a deep breath. Then when his concentration was at his peak, release. The chakra released like a pulse running through the forest, giving him sight as far as. Naruto smirked, gathering chakra to his feet. Pound them. Undo. Rin jumped up, alert, looking at the two in front of her. Kakashi, Obito. Obito smiled. We came to save you, Rin. It's alright now. Right. Kakashi chimed. We'd better get out here fast. Rin never felt more happy as she watched her two friends cooperating just to save her. Indeed, that was a good combination. The enemy from before began to stand. But you're still just brats. You're now right in my hands. Earth release. Rocky lodgement destruction. The cave began to shake and all three looked around. Oh damn. Was all that Obito could say. Everyone. Get out of here quickly. Kakashi yelled as the rocks began to fall. All three ran, but just then a rock smashed into Kakashi and he began to fall instantly. In my left eye's blind spot. Kakashi. Rin cried out. Obito turned back, but a large rock began to fall, and without much though he tossed Kakashi out, and all that could be seen was rocks falling and dust soaring. Kakashi's eyes slowly began to open to see Rin slowly raising as well, and groggily looked around to see that he was surrounded by rocks. And where was Obito? Obito. Kakashi said hoarsely. Rin gasped, a hand coming to her mouth and Kakashi's brow furrowed at her. What? Where's Obito? Rin pointed a shaky finger to the pile of rocks behind him, and his eye widened because it was that moment that he realized Obito had saved him. Obito. Aka began pulling off rocks first, and then Rin joined in, both furiously throwing rocks to find their dear friend. But not a sound was heard. Kakashi felt the tears fill his eyes, and he slammed his fist on one of the rocks. Damn it, Obito. Just then coughing was heard, and Rin and Kakashi made eye contact, hurrying even faster to get rid of more rocks when they heard a voice. Hear that? It wasn't Obito, that was certain, but it was familiar. Try that crap again and you'll really be good for nothing, you know. It took a minute, but Rin recognized it and continued to rip more rocks off while Kakashi was dazed. It just took one more rock and the space cleared to reveal a small pocket, the sight making them both freeze, for there in the small air pocket was Obito, alive and safe in the safe tiny arms of a young blonde. Didn't you say you were gonna be the next Hokage? I've decided to believe in you, so you can't die here. I can't believe you. You followed us. Naruto was amazed Rin could so expertly wrap Obito's injuries and yell at him. I told you not to be reckless. Naruto rolled his eyes. Reckless was how close he cut the timing. Obito had a concussion and a broken leg, but a split second later and he would have seriously died. Kakashi hadn't said a word yet, but he wasn't expecting him to, rather there was something more important to think about. They were going to be surrounded. And besides that, Kakashi didn't have the Sharingan. When Kakashi had first explained it, he had said that Obito had given him his Sharingan as his dying gift, and in turn Kakashi had been able to complete the Chidori. This time though, Obito lived and Kakashi's left eye was blind. He didn't have time to think about it, nor did he think he would if he did, and instead with determined eyes turned to Rin. I knew you were foolish, but to think you would come out here, you could have died. Nahara. The name made her freeze, that paired with the absolute authority in the child's voice had her breath hitch. Finish with Obito quickly, we're still in enemy territory and I have a bigger procedure for you to complete. Kakashi was astonished. The child just barely looked like a child with how adult and commanding his eyes were, and speaking of commanding, he sounded like their squad captain. Here this kid was in a short-sleeved gray shirt and black shorts, no guards, one pouch, and he was talking like he was ready for battle. What are you talking about, Naruto? Rin said, finishing the last wrapping. She looked at the young boy in front of her. Since she first met him there was something off about him, like he knew a little more than he should. Then he started following her. At first she thought it coincidence, but every day. At one point she purposely took paths that were abnormal and irregular, but sure enough he would appear and be right there. She knew then that he was searching her out, but she didn't know why. Now this authoritative person in front of her didn't necessarily surprise her, rather it seemed to fit better with the kid who could find her every day in the busy village. Right now we're down on manpower. Obito is useless and let's face it, you're nowhere near strong enough to take out a bunch of Iwa ninjas. Analyzing and comprehending the situation was not something a kid could do that easily, was all Kakashi could think. Right now the only one we can rely on is a half-baked scarecrow. It was a double insult and Kakashi was tempted to say something, but Rin beat him. And what are you suggesting we do then? It was clear by the look in her eyes that she wanted to live. She wanted to get out, but she was brave. She didn't cry. She would sacrifice if it came down to it. Naruto smiled. He took a look at the bristled Kakashi and almost laughed. He could never get under the skin of the Kakashi of his time, so this was a nice change. But for the matter at hand, we have no choice but to leave this to Kakashi. Both children blinked in most likely confusion. Honestly, he would be happy to get rid of all the enemy in the vicinity, but that wasn't possible, not with his promise to lay low. But you just said even Kakashi with how he is now. Naruto closed his eyes in patience. I know, and with one eye he'll fall, that's why I want you to transplant my eye him. Kakashi was fine in loneliness. He was fine casually obey the rules for the rest of his left. Even if all he felt was emptiness, that was okay with him because he hadn't wanted to end up like his father. Disgraced and then taking his own life, not caring about the people he would leave behind. He wouldn't be a coward. But Obito had shattered that. Cause deep down he really had loved his father and looked up to him. He had wanted to be just like him, to him his father had been a hero. He knew when he was wrong, he just never wanted to acknowledge it. But now he would change. That was why he went after Obito, why he went to save Rin. But there were always regret. That he simply decided sooner that he was going to help Rin. Maybe Obito wouldn't be injured, maybe they could have really defeated that guy, maybe he wouldn't have lost his eye, and then this kid who looked like he could be 6 wouldn't suggest such an unfathomable suggestion. What are you? Kakashi almost jumped as Naruto slapped a hand over Rin's mouth, but the look in those blue eyes were dead and serious and had him frozen. Rin, this is not the village, I repeat, we are in enemy territory. He released her mouth and leaned back. Keep your voice down. She cowered a bit but was obedient regardless. Do you understand what you're suggesting? The quirk of a blonde brow made it seem like she asked a dumb question. Well duh, idiot. Came a sound from the voice he was waiting for. I don't need. You do. Naruto cut off. Naruto knew that Kakashi needed a completed Chidori, and for that he needed a Sharingan, which would have been fine if Obito was on the brink of death. The only other thing that could come as a close second was his. Naruto didn't have a Sharingan obviously. However, his eyes were fast trained by years in the future, not to mention when his emotions got too high, they would enhance his sight to even the most minute details, effects of being a Jinchuriki he assumed. They couldn't see chakra flow, but if focused enough they could sense it visually. Either way, it was a damn good substitute. Naruto was pretty proud of himself though. He had completely forgotten about the Chidori and Kakashi losing his eye, but after seeing the bandage, it was a simple problem to remedy. You can't possibly fight with just one eye, and I plan to get out of this alive. Naruto touched his left eye. It would be weird losing it, but he had already made that commitment. Even if he ceased his own existence, he would save the future, and if losing one eye was the start, he smiled. Then the future was looking brighter already. He turned to Rin, who was still shocked. Rin. This must be done quickly, I don't know how much time we have left. I said I'm not taking your eye. But all that Rin saw was blue. Eyes that held a firm tone that reminded her of her teacher when he was in the midst of battle. Alright, Rin. Rin turned her eyes darkly on Kakashi. Hurry, Kakashi. This is the only way. Well, look who came out alive. The Iwa ninja said as he looked up at the boy standing at the edge of the rocks. There's something different about him. And there was, because as Kakashi opened his eyes they were very different. His right was a tired charcoal, but his left was a bright and luminous blue. Clearer than any sky and deeper than any ocean. Kakashi charged, tears filling his charcoal eye. Because his other eye belonged to the pain child down below. A child who shouldn't have had to sacrifice anything for someone he barely knew. But the kid was right. His sword broke. There was no way he could fight with one eye and two. He needed this eye. It was tiring him to use it, but that could be that it was just implanted, other than that it was perfect. He didn't know a thing about the blonde, but now the mystery grew because this eye saw everything. The man in front of him seemed to go in slow motion. He could see the killer intent of an attack like smoke forewarning him to move. How a child had eyes this clear was simply baffling. Kakashi's arm chirped loudly with the Chidori, but he didn't have tunnel vision anymore. He could see everything. Rin, grab Obito, Naruto said, holding where his left eye had been. The procedure should have painless, but for some reason from his pale face and sweat painless was far from what Naruto was feeling. Naruto, wait. What about Kakashi? She looked up to see the face of the enemy and gasped. Who number? The word caught her off guard as she looked at Naruto, who was clenching his hand harder at the empty socket. When he noticed her stare he gave a half-hearted smile. Relax, Rin, we're fine. She looked back at the enemy to see him fall over, and behind him stood a reliable teammate. Kakashi, she breathed out in relief. Let's go, we have to get out of here. He looked at the pained look on the blonde and guilt filled him because truth was he was enjoying the eye he had received. Are you okay? Naruto wished he could punch the kid. Ichi, he ground out. Truth was he was in hell right now. He had lost an arm in the future, but he had had Sakura heal it and Hiroshima's cells to mend things up, but his eye. His body was used to self-healing, and so the blood was circulating quickly, and instead of healing him, it was causing him immense pain. He wanted to tell his body to stop being stupid and that it was gone for good, but it continued to rebel. And though he wouldn't mind Rin healing it, she was tired and he needed her to move. He would have to endure. A sudden rumble sounded and the ground shook. Hurry! Kakashi yelled, holding his hand out. Naruto, quickly as pained as he was, went to one side of Obito, lifting him with Rin, and they jumped out before the place collapsed, racing from the area into the trees. Kakashi was panting now. He was tired and Rin was tired from the genjutsu, Obito was knocked out, and well Naruto he was ready to just kill whatever came in his path. Damn. Kakashi said as Rin gasped and pulled Obito closer to her. So they were surrounded. Naruto could feel the canines grow, but took a calming breath. They would live after all. Kakashi had lived through this before, but how had he done it? Rin, when I give the signal, take Obito and Naruto and run. Rin looked at Kakashi. No way. You can't. It's fine. I'm the commander here, just obey, okay? Kakashi gathered the chakra in his palm, listening to the sound of birds. Rin bit her lip. Then my feelings. Rin. Not too long ago I was the type of trash who would abandon you. He pulled out the three-pronged kunai and took a deep breath to brace himself when all of a sudden a heavy hand grabbed his hair and pulled his head back, so he was staring at one firm blue eye. What? So you're gonna waste the gift I just gave you? Kakashi sputtered as the chidori died in his hand and he pulled himself away from the boy. Look. I'm sorry about that, but if you want to live you have to. I don't plan on dying here. Naruto looked down at the enemy, counting them in his head, then looked at Kakashi's lost face. I don't plan on dying, but I sure as hell don't plan on abandoning you. Look, this isn't op quiz. Naruto said with a goofy smile, and the tempo change threw Kakashi off. WH. Do you remember what I said in the Hokage's office when we first met? Kakashi was honestly confused. What the heck was this kid talking? If it was to protect those precious to me, I could do all that and more. Kakashi's breathing hitched as he looked at the serious blue directed at him. No laughter, no amusement. This was the look of a leader. I don't care what you think of me right now, but you, Rin, even useless Obito, all of you have become precious to me. Kakashi was speechless. Even if I have to lose an eye or my life, I won't abandon you, and I won't let you die. Which was all good and whatnot, but how was he going to do that with a low profile? Doggone it. How had Kakashi said he lived? I hate you. The words hurt more than he wanted to admit as he looked at Kakashi's defiant eyes, but he knew Kakashi better than he knew himself, and he knew that rather than hating him, he hated himself for not being strong enough, and that was okay. Well, I like you. The confession brought a tint of pink to both Rin and Kakashi's cheeks. Man, these kids were so innocent. Now then, back to the problem. The enemy were close enough now. Kakashi quickly gathered the last of his chakra and got ready as a fury of thoughts ran through Naruto's head. How the hell did they survive? How the hell did they survive? How had they? The glint of metal flashed in his paraff and the memory came back. We were quickly surrounded. Kakashi said, leaned back casually as he looked out the window. Naruto gave him a sideways look, but then turned back to the recent letter he got from the war front. I told Rin to escape and was prepared to die. Kakashi sighed like an old man. Naruto noticed. I suppose using the Sharingan for the first time drained me cause I blacked out. Naruto put down the letter. It simply told him things he already knew. How'd you make it? Rin. Kakashi chuckled as if that was the joke of the year. He leaned coolly on the window, then looked at Naruto, giving him a soft look. It was your dad. Dad? Kakashi reached toward Naruto, reaching around him, and Naruto had to tense himself so his fight instinct didn't kick in, but Kakashi was smart, moving slowly and cautiously into Naruto's weapon pouch and pulled out a three-pronged kunai. I received something like this as my promotion gift. It had an alert seal on it, so as soon as I threw it, Naruto smirked in the memory. Damn you, Kakashi. The curse made him lose concentration as Naruto made a mad grab for the kunai in his hand, and just as the enemy jumped toward them, threw it expertly. But Kakashi didn't see much after that as his world went dark. The darkness began to fade and for a second he wondered if he died. I see you're finally awake. A familiar voice made him sit up in a hurry. Teacher? Kakashi looked at the face of his idol who was looking at him softly. How? Minato held up the three-pronged kunai. The mark on this kunai is a jutsu type that alerts me when it flies. So the enemies? Kakashi said, confused. I defeated them all. Minato said casually, then a thought appeared. What about Rin? And Obito? And a strong hand laid on his shoulder in order to calm down. They're all fine. Look. Underneath the starlit sky in the distance lay Obito, and Rin stood looking up in thick contemplation. What about the kid? Kakashi said hesitantly, but Minato smiled. You mean Naruto? Well, Rin ripped him a new one, and so he decided to sit over there. Minato pointed further right, and that's when Kakashi saw a small figure curled into the grass. As soon as he sat, he fell out. Apparently from Rin's diagnosis, his chakra was all over the place, and it was a surprise he was conscious. Kakashi frowned. There's something off with that kid, he muttered, but then turned back to the present. Indeed, I heard it all from Rin. Kakashi looked down, but a gentle hand ruffled his head. I'm happy though. Kakashi looked at his mentor at a loss. Minato's eyes were seeing more than the outside. You've grown. Kakashi frowned and looked away. He raised his hand to his heart that had indeed been lifted by Obito's words, and then to his eye. His gaze rolled to the young kid that had given it to him. I don't care what you think of me right now. All of you have become precious to me. Even if I have to lose an eye or my life, I won't abandon you. I won't let you die. The words ran through his head like waves. I like you. Minato felt Kakashi flinch and turned to him. He hadn't sensed any enemies, but Kakashi, are you okay? Your face is red. Shikaku raced through the village like lightning. He had one destination since he talked to the guards at the gate. The hospital. Team Minato had come back from their mission 3 days ago. A successful mission at that. Not only was the mission complete, but no one had died. No doubt thanks to Naruto, but the guard had said they had come back injured. Minato of course had to report to the Hokage, and Lord knows what that would sound like. What bothered him was the young one, Minato's double. The guard confirmed. Yay. Shikaku continued. Was he injured? He didn't think it was possible with how strong he was, but if he got a couple of scratches in order to keep a low profile he could respect that. What he didn't expect was the disheartened look of the guard and the silence. Something terrible had happened. That's why he was rushing through to the hospital, not pausing until he got to the receptionist. Catching his breath as she looked very surprised to see him. Oh. Mr. Shikaku. Did you just get back from a mission? Are you injured? It took another second for him to breath. Naruto, where's Naruto? The woman looked startled but quickly began to search through the papers and computer. I'm sorry, I don't. Naruto. He was injured. He had to come to the hospital. She had never seen a Nara so furious or loud, and it scared her enough to drop papers in a trembling mess. I'm sorry Mr. Nara, but really, you have to check again. I know, he's not here, came a clear voice. Shikaku turned to see the young gray-haired prodigy. He was dressed in casual clothes with wraps around his left eye. What the hell had happened on the mission? He was taken away. Shikaku couldn't stay focused. His brain was used to thinking multiple thoughts at once, so although he just wanted to focus on the words being said he noticed everything. This Kakashi who had been such a stuck in the mud was a bit gentler. His words came out softer. His eyes didn't look so hard and he seemed calmer. It was good, but was this what Naruto was hoping to achieve? The thought brought him back. Who took him? Kakashi's brow crinkled. Your elders, the Nara elders. They came in and took him away. No one is allowed to see him right now. Shikaku wondered silently if the Kakashi boy had tried and was told no. He nodded and gave a word of thanks and then left. So they were confining him, at least it was them and not the Hokage that would be coming soon enough. Shikaku walked firmly through the compound. Servants gasped as they saw him jumping out the way because right now he looked anything but carefree. They put him in the furthest part of the compound like a prisoner. Has his wounds been attended to? Shikaku turned on a servant. The male jumped before catching himself. Yes, a doctor was brought in. Shikaku nodded. That was good, at least the child was patched up. Sir, that child. Shikaku looked at the servant, fear etched in his face. Damn it, what had Naruto done that the servants were scared of him? Thank you, Shikaku said softly and the servant looked in awe. I'll take care of it. The servant smiled and gave a slight bow and walked off. The door lay at the end of the hall, but he wasn't sure what he was going to get, but Naruto better be prepared to see a very unhappy Nara. Or at least that was what Nara had thought, but what he needed now was oxygen. The room was dark when he walked in, and since it was now evening it was quite dark. It had taken him some time to figure out where they had put him and that the child in question was under house arrest until they could decide what to do with him. But he had come into the room with an agenda. To find out what had happened on the mission and deduce the damage. But his mind blanked. The moment he walked in the room he couldn't breathe. The air was ridiculously tense. The killer intent was so thick he thought his legs would give out the moment he moved. His plan was mind wiped because he couldn't remember a thing. All he saw was Naruto standing in the middle of the small room. His fist clenched hard enough blood was dripping. His chest heaving as if trying to contain himself and white bandages wrapped around his left eye just like the Haddock boy. Shikaku gaped as if trying to remember how to speak, but it sounded brutally choppy. Then Naruto what? The air was so thick as large canines were revealed due to the scowl on the boy's face. I let the snake slip away, came a growl. I could have grabbed him by the throat. The words died and Shikaku wondered if the mission failed. If you go back. Something similar but not quite a roar escaped the boy and he turned on Shikaku like a rabid animal. Shikaku stepped back into the closed door. There's no going back. That bastard is probably long gone. I don't even know how to find him, but I was so fucking close. Blue eyes. They were ever changing, Shikaku thought. Sometimes soft or playful, dead or serious. Sometimes they even changed color, but this time they were like blue fire burning hot with anger, and the pupil was slitted like a predator, and that was what made Shikaku collapse to the floor. Naruto had played good-natured, even commanding, but there was a lot Shikaku only just realized he didn't see, like anger. Anger, tears, actual love. Sometimes he'd see glimpses like downcast eyes, or soft gestures or even an unhappy scowl, but never too much. Naruto kept those things to himself and Shikaku no understood why. They were too intense. This child no, this man had experienced too much to show people the full extent of his emotions. They were too strong, too heavy, too scary. And Naruto must have seen the absolute fear on his face because he threw a careless hand over his face and through his hair and took a loud breath trying to calm himself down. Sorry you didn't. I didn't. It seemed to boil under the surface, but Shikaku could see him trying to contain it. I just need some release, you know. He chuckled darkly. 3 days. That's how long they had been back, and they had locked Naruto away in this room with nothing but his thoughts. No wonder he needed release. Let's go. He cursed his shaking voice, but Naruto didn't call him out on it. Where? Shikaku stood to his feet, taking a moment to check that he wouldn't fall over again, then looked back at Blue Eyes, not as frightening, but oh so weary. Nara Forest. Kakashi strolled casually through the village. Rin was most likely visiting Obito as usual, who was still in the hospital recovering and complaining. And Minato was. Well, that's what was bothering him. Minato was in continuous meetings about not only the war efforts but of that child, Naruto. Everything had happened so fast. They were all taken to the hospital, and not even an hour later the Nara clan elders appeared saying they were taking Naruto. Kakashi had fumed, but they had all but ignored him. He had tried to get info out of their teacher, but needless to say the man wouldn't budge. It was true the kid was suspicious, but for frick's sakes he had saved them. Didn't that count? Kakashi brooded, walking down the street when he felt something. Not saw, felt. It was weird. Ever since he got this eye he could feel things such as a familiar presence, even if they were far away. More anomalies that made Kakashi want to talk to the kid, but he couldn't. They wouldn't let him. So who was he feeling now? He looked around for a familiar sight, and it was then that he caught it, walking down the street, hands in their pockets, as if nothing fazed them. Dark eyes, looking like the most bored and tired person in the world, but with a hidden intelligence floating in the background, and without thinking Kakashi ran after him. Shikaku. Shikaku. Said man turned to look back. If he was surprised to see him he didn't show it. Ah, you the haddock boy, he said drolly. He seemed a bit more tired than usual, but Kakashi wasn't sure why he thought that and shook it off. Yay. He actually didn't know what to say to the adult. Shikaku Nara was a man he knew in passing, one that even his teacher looked to. Smart, loyal and strong, but they were not friends. They never worked together and hardly spoke. He didn't even know why he had called out, but he had. Shikaku raised a brow at the kid's silence. He couldn't help stare at the white wrapping on the boy's eye. After Naruto had gotten his release, or as Shikaku liked to say, doom on the Nara Forest, he had told him what had happened. First Shikaku had been mad, then sad. He knew that Naruto had probably made the best choice, but it was still sad. Naruto's eyes were one of his best features, and now one of them were gone. But all in all he had done what he had set out to do. I did what I had to. I was just pissed cause I could have done more. Whatever more was he didn't elaborate. But now to the child in front of him who had called him out. He was probably worried about Naruto. After all, Naruto had been confined in the compound for a week now, and they were just waiting for the Hokage's summoning. Well, maybe this would relieve some of the boy's tension, because a bored Naruto was an annoying one. Now the brat was asking about his sex life, and good lord, that was not a road he was going down with him of all people. You want to see him? Kakashi looked up and Shikaku knew he hit the nail on the head. Naruto. Do you want to see him? He asked again because he hadn't received an answer that seemed to rouse the boy as he looked down at the elders. Shikaku turned. It's fine, I'm the clan successor anyway, come on. Kakashi followed silently as the man walked down the street, then paused. Kakashi cocked his head. Was the man rethinking his decision? Instead the man went into the nearby shop and seemed to be getting food to go. When he finally came out he held up the bag. Brat's been complaining that he wanted some ramen. Kakashi thought, but let it slide as the man continued to walk. Clan compounds were always obnoxiously huge, and it only pissed him off further that they had put Naruto so far away. As if locking away a monster. And the Nara compound was just as bad as the forest, a maze of corridors that if you didn't have a certain level of IQ, you would easily get lost. It took a good half hour since they reached the actual compound for them to get to Naruto's chambers. Bastards, his room is that one at the end, Shikaku said as he stopped, and Kakashi couldn't help but think that the man wasn't going. Here, he passed him the bag of food. Give him this, I'll be back to pick you up later. The older man began to walk away, but stopped as if he forgot something. Wait for me, okay? No need for you to get lost, right? Just like the Nara forest indeed. Kakashi nodded and Shikaku seemed to accept it as he continued to leave. As Kakashi looked back at the door he felt his left eye warm and he touched it. Did it sense the familiar presence of its owner? He took a breath and walked forward, reaching the door. He wasn't nervous. He wasn't a coward. He could do this. He swung the door open and sitting on the bed crisscross of the small room looking out the window was the kid. The one who had saved Obito. The one who had given him his eye and gave them hope. Naruto. Naruto wasn't surprised to see Kakashi there. He had sensed him from the hallway. What he was surprised by was the bag in his hand. Is that Ichiraku's? Kakashi rolled his eye at the anticlimactic intro and walked closer to the bed and held out the bag. Shikaku said, you've been complaining. A sad smile skirted over Naruto's lips as he took the bag. It was true he had mentioned it, but to think the jerk would get it, well, best eat it fresh. Opening it, steam rolled out and he got a full whiff of the miso. He cautiously broke the complimentary chopsticks and with a courage he didn't know he possessed he plunged in, taking out some noodles and popped them in his mouth. And Kakashi watched as he was clearly ignored over a bowl of noodles. And his mouth dropped because as he watched the blonde chewing large baby fat tears roll down whiskered cheeks. Suojijiud. Naruto hiccuped in between bites. Kakashi didn't understand this mystery of a person, but he was patient. He had learned to be from the best after all. And Naruto didn't take too long to finish, not even leaving a droplet of broth behind. Sorry about that, Naruto said, wiping his eye as he finally acknowledged Kakashi's presence. I was just a bit overwhelmed. What's up? How's the eye? Kakashi was taken aback by his casual nature, like it was a book or household item, and he was just asking to see if it was a good gift, not like it was a body part that he would never get back. It's fine, Rin did a good job. He muttered, unable to look at the opposing blue eye. That's good, I know she's an awesome medic, you thanked her right? Now he felt he was talking to a grown man. He glared at the obviously younger male. Who and what are you? Naruto blinked owlishly at him, then waved his hand carelessly. Besides that, he said nonchalantly, brushing the question aside. Now that you have a heart again, how will you move forward? Kakashi didn't like being brushed off. Why you don't? You're old mincet. Naruto continued, not caring about Kakashi's personal pet peeves. Was kill your emotions for the sake of the mission, and Obito's is being emotionally invested. I struggled a lot with finding the right balance. His back was facing him as Naruto sat on his kitchen bar stool, ever looking at important documents. Heart or stone? Kindness or killer? He couldn't see his face, but he saw the man chug down the bottle of beer like it was a ritual, and perhaps it was at this point. The mask went back up and he turned with those bone-tired eyes he had more often than not. What did you decide? Maybe Kakashi didn't think he was paying attention because he looked genuinely surprised. The alcoholic influence seemed to fade and he seemed to innocently ponder the question. Can't remember. Why did he even bother listening to the old man? But, there was the alcohol again. The former teacher leaned forward into Naruto's space, not unlike how Naruto often acted in his younger days, and with a fierce swing, swept all the papers that he had been looking through off the bar top. He had been looking for a reaction, but he would be sourly disappointed, and you could see it in the pained look that he couldn't seem to hide anymore. What does it matter anymore? All I'm doing lately is, it's a difficult choice. But there must be a balance. Never forget that, Naruto said, his voice soft as a whisper as the younger Haddock stood in front of him listening. Sometimes you'll have to close your heart, but there will be times you have to hold out until the last second and keep believing in others. This wasn't the talk of a child. An untrained person who knew nothing of being a ninja. This was too similar to how the war veterans would speak, like how his father would speak. After a tough battle, when he felt burdened with guilt and pain, and he just wanted to make sure that his son didn't make the same mistake. He blanked and didn't even realize what he had done until he saw that he had thrown himself at Naruto, gripping the collar of his shirt as he was kneeled over the boy laying back on the bed. And if he was hoping to get a reaction, he didn't. These weren't childish eyes. This eye was broken. Because Naruto was only half there, somewhere in between reality and the past. All I'm doing lately, tell me, what did you decide? Kakashi couldn't help but yell. All I'm doing lately is. Naruto didn't answer, but Kakashi knew from the look in his blue eye. All I'm doing lately is looking for your heart. Kakashi didn't move. The look was too heartbreaking, and 10,000 more questions appeared in his head. What happened to you? Who did you lose? Have you always been like this? Why didn't someone help you? But none came out. Even the first question he asked got thrown on the back burner, and the only thing that distracted him was the white wrapping on Naruto's face. He grit his teeth as he loosed his grip and brought a hand up to brush against the bandage. Even if I have to lose an eye or my life. The words rang, and with hands almost too gentle he continued to outline the eyes that should have been under the wrap. He saw a tanned hand slowly reach up, as if not to frighten him, reaching for his bandage as well. Hey, take it off, let me see. Kakashi frowned but obliged as he leaned back on his knees, still over Naruto, and began to unwrap the bandage around his head. With each loop done he felt that it was becoming more and more intimate, and he swore the room was getting warmer. Closer and closer to the end, and he could feel the mobility in his hand slowly stopping. He willed them to continue, but they began to shake. He wants to see his eye move. But they stopped at the very end, and he couldn't pull the last of the gauze that was covering it. Damn it. He cursed his own internal weakness. But ever slowly again tanned hands reached up and touched his, and his breath caught as Naruto guided them down to see the closed scarred lid. Open it, came the order, and Kakashi slowly opened it, revealing the blue sapphire-like eye. It seemed weird on Kakashi. The Kakashi he knew had a red one full of illusionary power. This was its opposite, with naive innocence, but it was pretty in its own right. Still bright with young curiosity, something he had long lost after the war. During the war, because of the war, Naruto reached up, guiding Kakashi's face down so foreheads touched, and he prayed. He never cared about a higher power before, but he hoped that if there was one, that maybe, just maybe, they would heed him. That the future would change, that he wouldn't lose his most precious people again. Add with this eye that surely good things would follow if anyone would hear him and help him. Naruto came a breathy tone and as he slowly opened his eyes. Well, Naruto, I questioned, but you had I expected higher standards. Kakashi jumped up and turned to see Shikaku standing in the doorway with a sly smile, and that's when he really took note of the position he was in. SHT. Language haddock, Shikaku said playfully as he watched the young jonin quickly jump off the bed where he had clearly been straddling Naruto. And Naruto as usual was unfazed by such things and simply sat up looking at Shikaku playfully. Don't worry, I wasn't cheating on you, Kaku. Kakashi held a hand over his eye since he couldn't be bothered to wrap it as the smile on Shikaku's face dropped. Shut the hell up, damn brat. He would never get used to this. Anyway, sorry to cut the visit short but we have to go. Naruto looked at him pointedly, so despite Kakashi still being there he continued. The Hokage is summoning us. Kakashi's mouth dropped. Why would the Hokage be summoning Naruto? And by the look on Shikaku's face, it didn't seem good. He was so lost in thought he didn't notice Naruto walk up to him until he felt his headband fall off. What? Hush. Was all he said as he moved Kakashi's hand out of the way, then continued. Kaku, will everyone be there? Kakashi was ignored again, feeling like a child in an adult conversation, even though it was Naruto who was reaching up to fix his headband. Shikaku sighed, leaning on the door. Everyone and their mothers, I hope you're ready for this. Naruto tied it off. There, better right. The headband that once hung straight across his forehead now came down in a slight slant to cover his new eye. Yay, good. Naruto smiled cheerfully. Now let's get you out of here cause I have a date. Shikaku and Naruto bid Kakashi goodbye, and once they knew he was out of sight the atmosphere changed. What are you going to do? Shikaku asked as Naruto turned and began to walk to the tower. I plan to tell them the truth. Shikaku's mouth dropped as he looked over at the young boy who had just realized mimicked his style, with hands deep in his pocket and a bit leaned back. What do you mean the truth? Naruto's eye looked bored as he looked ahead. Not everything, but the next step is something that takes place out of the village, something I'd rather get under control now. Shikaku grimaced. So you have to tell them. Naruto stopped just as they got to the entrance of the tower. What's about to happen next is too large for me alone to handle. Not to mention if I can involve Konoha in it as well, it may be more beneficial to them in future. Thinking of the future, the benefit of Konoha, that was the mindset of a Hokage. Don't worry, you're still my right-hand man. Naruto gave him a soft smirk. I expect you right beside me. Shikaku couldn't keep the return smile at bay. Whatever you say, damn brat. Minato knew why he was here, he just didn't know what here actually was. The room was full with clan leaders and village elders and of course the Hokage. It was a precaution. A child, at least that was how he posed, had gotten into the village without being detected. He had no records and from the report from the mission, he was most likely trained as a ninja, in other words, a spy. Inochi Yamanaka as well as his favorite protege Ibiki sat on standby. A knock resounded and all those that were whispering fell silent as the Hokage drew in a breath. Enter. The door creaked and in walked the topic of conversation. Shikaku Nara, the laid-back successor of the Nara clan, looking as calm as usual, but within the depths of his eyes, tactics of a thousands filtered. And the other. Naruto, the person in question. Walking in like Shikaku's rival in laziness, one eye wrapped evidence of his care for others and the other blue eye calm. Shikaku stopped a ways back, head down, while Naruto continued into the center of the room. This was a trial. Naruto, the Hokage said. His face no longer smiling or cheery as it had once been. But that was a given. He had trusted the boy and to find him surrounded by secrets and lies hurt. It is clear that you have been found to not be who you said you were, so I will ask you once more, who are you? Truth be, Minato had nothing against the boy, in fact he had his respect. He had saved his students after all. Rin had told him of the words that he had said and the things he had done. Yes, the boy was suspicious, but he had his respect. So Minato watched with objectivity. Watched as the blonde stared at the third Hokage with no fear. I will say that I apologize for hiding the truth from you, but I will be honest now. They all waited on bated breath. Would he admit his traitorry? I am Naruto, I have from the future and I came back in time to change the past and reset what is to come. That, Minato thought, was not what he was expecting. Bring in Inochi. Have him mind-walked. What lies? He's planning to steal our secrets. What had he been expecting? Sarutobi honestly didn't know, but this wasn't it. Had he said that Shikaku had been secretly training him, that might have been more believable. This wasn't. Shikaku sighed in the background and he was sure they had talked about what he would say. By the weariness that Shikaku was displaying, Naruto had choose the worst option. But the look in the boy's eyes was honest. He wasn't joking and this was not a prank of any kind. Can you prove it? Leave it to the Nara elder to think rationally. Prove it. Don't tell me you think he might be telling the truth. The Ashi was young still, so his father had stepped in for this case. He doesn't seem to be lying though, the Yamanaka clan leader said as he looked at him with analytical eyes. He smells like Konoha, he has no underlining smell, said the Inyazuka leader. Don't be foolish, there are ways to trick the system, this is pure foolishness. Danzo scowled. Saratobi wanted to give a sigh, but withheld and instead observed an almost nostalgic smile cross the young boy's face as if remembering something. "Do you have proof, boy?" Inara had asked and Naruto casually looked at him like this wasn't a trial to determine his fate. "I don't." Saratobi finally sighed. This kid was not helping his case. "See. Lock the boy up, have him walked and we'll learn who he's working with." Danzo was always so quick with the worst case scenario. "Naruto," he said tiredly. The war was slowly ending. Why did this have to happen now? Do you understand your situation? You appear with an unbelievable claim and no proof. What would you like me to say to that?" Saratobi asked. Naruto looked at the old man with eyes that had an abundance of wisdom. "If you are the Hokage I think you are, you will do as Danzo said." The comment caught him along with the rest of the room off guard including Shikaku, if the harsh way he whispered Naruto's name was anything to go by. "However you will find no matter what I am telling the truth." If he was from the future then he knew of Ibiki and Inochi's abilities and knew there was little that he could hide from them, so was he being honest? Still something wasn't right. "You are a strange one." Inaru head Shikamaru smirked. "You initiated contact with my son and infiltrated the clan, but despite being so close you did little besides sleep there and destroy part of the forest." Shikaku grimaced. "So dad knew. You build a fake story, sneak on an A rank mission exposing yourself, but saving 3 lives and aiding us in the end of our war, and now you seem to have no problem telling us that you're from the future. Why wait until now? Why not tell us earlier?" "I'm sure you told Shikaku and he believed you." Man, forget Shikaku and Shikamaru. Granddad was a beast and the thought made him smirk, but now it was time for the explanation. "Naras are smart. I worked well with one in the future, most likely a future clan leader." "Yep, Granddad was a boss." "Correct, I needed someone to confide in not just for advice but emotional support. At the time telling the Hokage of my predicament would have hindered an important event that I had to prevent." That caught Minato's attention. "What did you prevent?" he said, in which Naruto gave him a pointed glare as if this had nothing to do with him, which he would beg to differ. "Obito's death." A scoff resounded through the room as the cold-eyed Uchiha leader looked down on the child. "So you're saying telling the Hokage that information would hinder you? Would it not have helped? The Hokage could have easily rewrote the mission if need be. This is utter foolishness. We're listening to the enemy now. Negotiating. When did Konoha become so weak?" Naruto grit his teeth. "Maybe an Uchiha Hokage wasn't the best idea. I wish to listen to why as well." Came a whisper from the Aburam clan. And Naruto simply nodded. "If I had said something before and the mission was rewritten, then important lessons during that mission wouldn't have been gained. The timing had been crucial, involving the village would have complicated the mission. I took the simplest route at the risk of my identity in order to make sure I only fixed the problem." Lessons, he was referring to Kakashi. So not only was Obito important to the future, but so was Kakashi as well. That was no surprise. "Hey, who were you in the future anyway?" the Akamichi clan head said boisterously. Naruto blinked then actually laughed a bit. "That's my name isn't enough, huh? Then let me give you a bit more information. I am Naruto, the future 7th Hokage, capable of Sage Mode and..." Shikaku saw his eye sadden, but he continued regardless. "Previous Jinchuriki of the Hidden Leaf Village." Damn it, every time he learned something Naruto threw a new curveball. Not once had he mentioned holding a tailed beast. Many of the elders stood in fear. The smarter ones simply widened their eyes in shock, and of course the Hyuga and Uchiha had activated their Taijutsus. "You lie. You have no other chakra. Indeed, I sense no alternate form inside you." It was Naruto's turn to scoff. "Had you asked I could have told you that I no longer have him inside me." A breath of relief flowed through the room. "How? One may only lose the beast by death or extraction." Naruto interrupted the Hokage. How? Minato was wide-eyed because now it had gotten personal. This boy had been like Kushina. In the future a powerful man declared war. He extracted the beast from their containers, effectively killing them and gaining immense power. It was because of that man that Konoha was brought to ruins. That was enough of a statement to bristle all their pride. I in the end was no exception. With the 9 tails being extracted, the time reversal jutsu was put into effect and I was brought here. The room was quiet. "You're saying that the whole of Konoha was brought down by one man?" Inochi said through grit teeth. "Yes and no. He was the leader, but he had manipulated many hearts of strong people onto his side. We were hard pressed. By the time that we could reach him too many lives had been lost. He had escaped and brought out a world war. They took the news as well as Shikaku had, but this time Naruto elaborated. Civilians with weapons we didn't even know existed that could fire faster and deadlier than arrows, bombs that rivaled jutsus were unleashed. Shinobi and civilians all on one battlefield, killing one another. It was inherently worse than Shikaku had imagined, and so Konoha fell." Saratobi acknowledged, pain reflected in Naruto's eye. "The future I wish to change. And how do you hope to do so?" Shikamaru glared. He had not taken the news well. "There are certain events in this timeline that not only bred the fall of the future, but created it. I wish to change those and heal the fractured pieces before they break." The fist slammed on the table as the Inyazuka female rose to her feet in anger. "Why don't we just find the bastard that started all this?" If it was one thing Naruto had swore he would not do was say Madara's name. Shikamaru had told him that if he did go back, saying the name would incriminate not only Madara, but all the Uchiha, and the massacre would only happen sooner. The man is a ghost, neither dead or alive. He leeches off of those suffering and fills their head with fantasies. Finding him will do no good, nor do I know where to start. I need to break the legs and arms of his plan in order to isolate him. He received a glare, but they were content with that, at least for now. All this would go well if we actually believed this tall tale. Danzo ever the pessimist, but Shikamaru was intrigued, as most Naras would be. After all, that was what got Shikaku involved in the first place. You told us because you need us to be involved. You need our help in order to break off a leg, as you put it. Let's say we humor you, what is it you are requesting from us exactly? Naruto smiled. It took forever, but they had reached the point. The Megakure needs help. Shikaku hadn't seen that one either, damn curveballs. Due to the climate, their internal economy is poor, trade routes are scarce, and they are currently under poor leadership by a man by the clan name of Salamander. They had heard the rumors, but saw that it had little to do with them being so far away. I propose that Konoha join forces with them and assist them. Actually, this wasn't the first time that a Megakure was brought up. But to be honest, there just wasn't enough in it for them. They're asking us to support a lowly village. What good would that do for us? They have not sought out help, why should we be bothered? Naruto only had so much patience for ignorance, especially from a man like Danzo. Though it's true they do not have a lot of natural resources, they clearly make up in their innovative natures. They have far exceeded Konoha in the technology department. Allying with them would surely benefit us in the future. They have no desire to ally with anyone at this time. It would be the epitome of foolishness to charge in. They would think us enemies. Naruto turned quickly on the Hyuga leader, and Shikaku could see the candle of patience wearing away. As I said, currently the village is under poor leadership. The man Salamander exploits the weak and is essentially hurting the village. If we could intervene. Intervene? You would suggest we boorishly intrude on another village's democracy? Minato was also tired of the pessimistic response from the Uchiha leader. If they didn't believe the child was somewhat from the future before, this conversation was solidifying it, because this was a conversation even his Chunin couldn't keep up with. I am suggesting that we help. It is a leader's job to handle their home, and whether or not the salamander person is a good leader or not, he is the Hokage of a Megakure, and it is his responsibility to cater to his village. Hyuga said as if winning a game of shogi, but Shikaku took a step back because this was not a battle he wanted to be a part of. Even if a Megakure is to fall, that has little to do with us. We are simply to care for our own future. Don't you dare tell me of the future. A heavy and oppressive wave of chakra filled the room, and Shikaku and Minato had to bring their arms up to protect themselves from the blast. Anbu fell out of hiding, and clansmen that were brought as guards appeared in front of their leaders ready for battle. But it would be futile. Shikaku had faced a boy firsthand, and none of these ninja would be able to hold a match to him. He looked to see Naruto attempting to calm himself. Apparently that had been the last straw. Sarutobi's mouth hung wide as if frozen. The child had said he had been a Hokage reaching even sage, but it was hardly believable. But at the moment, as his two Anbu guards stood protectively in front of him, he did believe. The blue eyes simmered and looked back at the leaders. The Megakure will soon enter into a civil war. The message brought them back to the discussion, that information they had been unaware of. Because of Salamander's oppressive leadership, the village is being cut in half, and they will begin to collapse from the inside out. In its moment of weakness, the strong will take advantage and abuse it. A Megakure became the headquarters of terrorist organizations that would later pose threat to Konoha. The words came out tired, and the leaders took the risk of sending their subordinates back into the shadows. Naruto looked at the third firmly. By aiding the people and overthrowing Salamander, we could easily form a treaty. Without a doubt, with the crippled state it is in currently, they would require many resources and assistance, but the technological advances and additional land would prove more beneficial in the long run, not to mention Konoha would have more shinobi support in that portion of land. The mission radius would essentially increase, and financially we would end up being repaid. With the right leader placed in a Megakure and a well-written treaty, we could significantly increase Konoha's influence. No one spoke. Shikaku was amazed, as he hadn't even realized that notion. The only person who had managed to think that far was Shikamaru. He had mentioned having the Megakure to increase influence, but he didn't know enough about the country to vouch anymore for them. And then you also had the heavyweight. A civil war. Terrorist. We just ended our own war, and you expect us who are still recovering to enter another village's war? Yamanaka whispered, clenching his fist as he remembered many of the faces that he would never see again. No one wanted another war. So much was lost and broken in wars to begin another one so soon. If we use their own resources and people, we will barely have to send out many. Shikamaru's jaw clenched. Who are you thinking exactly? Because this child Hellman was too smart to not have thought that far. A tactician, of course, a few capable field hands, medics, that's all. Danzo slammed his fist on the table. You underestimate war. Do you think so little people will be able to overthrow a nation? The hard glare and canine scowl prevented more questions. I'm not underestimating anything. A Megakure is not completely weak and without resources, they just need guidance. It would not be our job to take over the war for them, but to simply assist them in succeeding. Who here really knew of a Megakure military strength anyway? Still, you make the count sound less than 10, surely you would need a stronger force than that. Naruto sighed at the old man. Actually, I was thinking along the lines of 5 to 6. The whole room gasped and ready to yell all at once again, but Naruto raised his hand silencing them. I say this only due to one fact, and that is that I would be there as well on the front lines. Silence. Shikaku glared, right-hand man his arse, so he was planning to take him to a Megakure from the beginning. The problem was, did they believe him? He had proven he was strong, that much was sure, but how strong no one knew. But to accept this all as true, that would mean this man-child was from the future. It seems so far-fetched to say in the least. I believe him. Naruto should have been happy, but considering who it was coming from, he had mixed feelings. Minato, you believe what he says is true? Sarutobi asked. Minato stepped further into the light. From the moment that Naruto walked in, I think he has by far proven that he is not only not ordinary, but not a child. If what he says about a Megakure is true, I see no reason why we shouldn't assist, and if it will only take 5 people, all the more reason. He has given me no reason to doubt his word, nor has he said a single selfish notion that would underline another hidden agenda. Yes, I believe that Naruto is who he says he is. They couldn't deny what Minato had said. But time travel. The future. How could such old school people wrap their brain around it? My own teleportation jutsu also has abilities that distort time and space to a certain degree. If we also combine the mass chakra of a tailed beast into the equation, a time reversal jutsu would not be entirely impossible. Highly improbable, but not impossible. Even still, even if one said it was possible, the likelihood that it would succeed is less than 5%, not to mention a distortion in time would without a doubt change the traveler. To what extent, who knew, but they surely wouldn't be the same, mutating them in a sense, or changing them physically into who knows, maybe a child. Shikamaru sighed. He had never thought so hard that he could get a headache. And even if he wanted to believe that he was indeed from the future, then that meant he accepted that the future he had come from had all been destroyed. That the village that they all equally loved had fallen. Why not prove it then? Shikamaru looked at his troublesome child. Half of this was his fault anyway. Had he not taken in the boy? No, even if he hadn't, this would still have happened. You all suggested that he be mind-walked, and Naruto here hadn't seemed too opposed. So do it. With the Yamanaka clan here, it would be a simple matter. He expected nothing less from his own son. Naruto didn't seem too happy though. I would like to see. Me too. If he is telling the truth, we shall see. Why? Cause his memories will match. Hurry up then, what are we waiting for? Sarutobi raised a hand, then turned to Naruto. Do you accept this? Your memories will be infiltrated. You cannot hide from this jutsu. But if it is found that you are lying, the Hokage's eyes as well as everyone's in the room darkened. You will be sentenced to death. Well, Naruto smiled, considering how much of a hell this anyway was, maybe death wouldn't be so bad. But he kept that to himself. I'm telling the truth, believe it. The Noichi was brought in immediately, including the mass equipment that they would need so that they could all visually see into his brain. The prep gave Naruto time to shuffle through the memories, hiding away the more incriminating ones and definitely more personal ones. He had to be careful not to hide too much, as the Yamanakas would be able to tell and without a doubt pick it apart if nothing else but to sedate their own curiosity. But it couldn't be helped hiding the true form of the mastermind, Obito, and one other thing, something that wouldn't necessarily concern them, but he was in no way about to reveal. He wasn't even planning to tell Shikaku about that. Like hell he would tell a bunch of geezers. Alright everyone, put on the headgear and we will begin. Minato stood in front of him with a hardened glare while the Yamanaka leader stood behind him. They were both going in order to project a clearer visual for the large group in the room. Naruto looked at all the people who were ridiculously eager to get into his brain. They would be sourly disappointed. Ah. Wait, I'd rather he not. Everyone turned to the Jonin that he pointed to, who was equally very shocked. The man had vouched for him, it was only fair that he be allowed to see. Naruto, that's a bit. Sarutobi started, but Naruto shook his head. Give it to Shikaku, there is no need for you to see my memories. Blue eyes clashed with blue, but Minato didn't fight it. It was clear the boy wasn't a fan of his since they first met. So he handed the helmet to the Nara instead and watched. He would learn what he needed in time, whether Naruto liked him or not. Alright, if we're ready we can begin. Four hands touched his head and he felt a bit disgusted. Yamanaka men were totally not his type. Shikaku scoffed as they all heard the thought resonate through his brain, only he could take this lightly. He looked around the darkness that him along with everyone that had been in the room floated in. Closed scrolls that they would be filtering through were everywhere. Naruto, keep your thoughts silent if you please. The Yamanaka muttered, then he turned to the others, giving a brief nod to his son. As for how we are going to do this, I will be in charge. The speed of the memories may seem fast, but bear with me, as all we are doing is confirming his story. As such, things will pass through quickly in order to get through as much information as possible. He reached his hand out and a scroll obediently came. Brace yourself, which Shikaku had learned after growing up with Inochi meant welcome to hell. And that's what it was, because he felt his body getting pulled so hard and fast that he felt his brain might actually explode, then it stopped. Monster. He looked up to see hateful glares and sniffling that had to be coming from the body they were occupying. Demon. Beast. When had the village become so cruel as they looked at the person with such hate, and the boy turned to a window revealing the crying face of a young child. A bit chubbier and boyish, but without a doubt Naruto naively unaware why the people around him hated him and broken-hearted. Shikaku felt his feet clenched, then the scene speed by again. He was looking up to a cruel and cynical-looking man who was laughing manically at him. "You're the nine-tailed fox. You're the demon that killed not only his family, but destroyed the village. You're nothing but a monster." Overwhelming sadness fell over him and a bit of understanding because it all made sense. The scene changed again to what looked like a roof. A dark-haired child with an Uchiha symbol and a pink-haired girl with a deep blush sat next to him as a voice caught his attention. "Alright, you in the orange." Happiness filled the space. "I'm Naruto Uzumaki. What I like is ramen, especially the kind at the Ichiraku ramen shop. What I dislike is the 3-minute wait after you pour in the boiling water. My hobbies are eating ramen. And my dream is to be the next Hokage." Gasps were heard as they now understood clearly who Naruto really was. Shikaku chuckled, "So he really like ramen, huh?" A splash of gray was glimpsed as the scene changed abruptly. The feeling of hunger that made even Shikaku rub his stomach. In the ninja world, those who break the rules are scum, that's true, but those who abandon their friends are worse than scum. Wind-blown leaves and then another scene change. The dark-haired Uchiha smirked. "Hey scaredy cat, you're not hurt, are you?" The scene changed. Blood lay on the floor, and it looked like the person whose view they were looking through was shifting. Sadness was filtering. "You talk too much and your words they cut deeper than any blade." Came a deep voice. The scene were changing faster. "Bring it on, you jerk. Anything you throw at me I'll give it back 1,000-fold. My name is Naruto Uzumaki, and I'm going to defeat every one of you, believe it." What does pain feel like? It's almost unbearable, isn't it, the pain of being all alone? I know that feeling, I've been there, in that dark and lonely place, but now there are other people who mean a lot to me. I care more about them than I do myself, and I won't let anyone hurt them. That's why I'll never give up. I will stop you, even if I have to kill you. They saved me from myself, they rescued me from my loneliness, they were the first to accept me as who I am. They're my friends. Rain, pain, loneliness. Tons of people dressed in black, sobs. When a person dies, he disappears, along with his past, current lifestyle, and his future. Many people die in missions and wars. They die easily and in surprisingly simple ways. Those who die have goals and dreams. But everyone has something as important as those. Parents, siblings, friends, lovers, people who are important to you. They trust and help each other. The bond between the people important to you ever since birth and the string that binds them becomes thicker and stronger as time goes by. It's beyond reason. Those bound to you by that string will do that because it is important. More tears, an unreadable tombstone, and a glimpse of gray hair. Don't look away when you live like a shinobi, this is how it ends. The scene changed faster and faster to harder battles, then pain. "I always knew you were alone. In the beginning I was glad because I knew you were like me. I wanted to talk to you. And you answered my every question. We're both popular and all, so I decided that you would become my best friend. I didn't want to lose because I was called a loser all the time. Even when we became a team, I still thought this way. I always tried to lie but the truth is I always wanted to be like you. I aspired to be like you. Because of that I was glad that you wanted to fight me." More sadness. "When I'm with Iruka-sensei, I think if that's what having a father is like. When I'm with you, I think if that's what having a brother is like." Another familiar name and more sadness. "Just shut up for once. What the heck do you know about it? It's not like you ever had a family in the first place. You were on your own right from the beginning. What makes you think you know anything about it, huh? I'm suffering now because I had those ties. How on earth could you possibly understand what it feels like to lose all that? Something so painful it felt like something was breaking, then it disappeared." It's not only jutsus and power. As shinobi, we must be able to make sure we have proper judgment and make good decisions. If you want to live as a shinobi, you must be wise. If you're a fool then it will be a world full of pain. That's reality. The voice sounded eerily familiar to only a few, but only one person, the teacher of said person, could put a name to it. The memories flashed so fast, faster and faster, and all the information tried to lodge itself in his brain, but it seemed overwhelming. Then it truly began. "Blood. Naruto. She is willing to die for you, that's why your life is not the only one. Apparently my life, too, was one of yours too, Naruto." This is what happens when you talk about hope and ideals. This is reality. Naruto, what do you have in this reality? You have no father and mother, your master is dead, and as long as you keep opposing, your friends will die one after the other. No one that acknowledges you will survive. And you already know what lies ahead of all this loneliness. There's no need to be in this reality. Come here, Naruto. More blood, dying. Thousands of bodies scattered on a battlefield. You aren't a monster fox anymore. You're one of my teammates from the Leaf Village. The Hokage created this situation. I'll become Hokage and change the village. Stop. The thought wasn't loud enough to be a current one, but they all still heard it. There is no such thing as a victory in this world. Hope is merely an illusion. Stop. More blood, more pain, tears. You guys irritate me so much that I can't even express it in words, so I'll just tell you something about me. I'm no trash. And I'll never become trash. And I won't let you kill my comrades. Stop. More blood, pain and hate. He's gone, he's gone. Damn right, I'm mad everyone thought you would get him. We believed in you. Stop. More blood, tears, bodies falling. This village needs you. I need you. Please become the Hokage. Stop. Rivers of blood, children's bodies, familiar faces. I won't let you drown. I won't allow you to drown in this sin alone. Stop it. Tears, fallen buildings, graves without markers. It was getting harder to breathe. Isn't it funny you, who had the light of hope now only bears the shadows of pain, while I stand victorious. Stop it. Then pain so excruciating that it felt like limbs were being ripped apart. Naruto. Wake up, we only have one chance. Stop. Don't. Screaming was heard, but they could no longer tell if it was from a memory or their own throat. Stop. Don't leave me. Then it went black. For the older men who had experienced death, the sadness and pain of what they witnessed was contained. But for the two younger ones, they did not have that skill. If the vomiting Shikaku and Inoichi had just done was evidence. Minato was not sure whether he was now really curious or glad he hadn't watched the memories. Each person was amazingly sullen, and the younger ones were trying to gather themselves from the graceless display they had showed. The only one unaffected was the person in question. Naruto. It was Sarutobi who recovered first and looked at the unaffected blonde. Indeed, now that he had seen the memories, he no longer saw a child staring back at him, rather an adult male who had lost too much to be able to function. An adult that bore the weight of the future. This was not a small child with eyes too big for his face, with long lashes and plump lips. This was the 7th Hokage. You've given us a lot to think about. There were no whispers this time, no interruptions. What shall you decide then? That was the question they had to answer. What would they do with all this information? What would they do with him? It was impossible to think straight with the unbridled memories floating in their own minds. You will be put into a cell until further notice. Shikaku jumped, looking at the Hokage in horror. After all that, did the man still not believe him? In the meantime, we will contact. He looked pointedly at Naruto. We shall contact Jiraiya, do you understand? Naruto held a small smile. I expected nothing less from the 3rd Hokage. It was a hot topic among the shinobi, and before noon the word had spread that the blonde twin was a spy and being locked away in the interrogation and torture chamber. And that's where Kakashi was heading. He hadn't even heard the truth from the boy himself yet. He had to know. So when evening began to fall, he moved with the stealth of a true jonin and went to the building. He was lucky that it wasn't his first time, and no one really knew the connection he had with Naruto because they let him in casually as if nothing was up. It only took a little misdirection, and then he was heading down the hall with a key. He would need to discuss the level of security with the higher-ups later. Oh Kakashi, you can't just walk in here. You're gonna get yourself in trouble. There was no surprise in either of their eyes because the eyes knew when they were near each other within a 5-me radius. Kakashi ignored him though and began to unlock the cell. Whoa there Kakashi, if you're trying to free. Shut up. He refused to be dragged into this kid's pace again. I'm not freeing you. He opened the door and closed it behind him. I'm coming in. Naruto looked at the dark glare on charcoal eyes. This Kakashi was still too emotional compared to the one he knew. And though he tried to find common ground between them, it was remarkably difficult. Is it true? Oh, Naruto knew what he was talking about, but he smiled. When did he not play around? What on earth are you possibly refer? The quick step was all it took for him to close the distance, and Naruto slammed against a brick wall held up by his collar. Don't mess with me. Are you a spy? Naruto couldn't gauge it, why Kakashi was reacting like this. Had he filled enough of a spot that this accusation made him feel betrayed? Still, this was a little over the top. Kakashi was more cool-headed than this even on a bad day. Why are you so confused? Naruto said he had no room to be amused. Does what I say matter? What is it you believe? Kakashi's eyes widened again. He felt he was being talked down to. You're getting overwhelmed, calm down. The words were like magic because all the rage he had been feeling began to simmer instantly. There is no reason to feel lost, Kakashi. Kakashi's teeth clenched as he looked down. I asked you before, what will you do? What decision will you make? Right now you are too emotionally invested. You need to approach things more level-headed. Naruto sighed. You need balance, that is your role. If you can't do that, who else will balance out Obito? Kakashi's head whipped up and he looked into a relaxed blue eye, ever calm. He didn't know why he had been so affected, but everything this kid said to him echoed in his brain and repeated infinitely. Kakashi brought his hand up to his headband and watched as Naruto's eyes widened as he lifted it. I wanted to hear the truth from you. Blue clashed with blue. Kakashi was relaxed, sporting that bored gaze he was ever known for. Maybe another time Haddock. Kakashi didn't even have to look to know who it was, he had sensed him approaching, and Naruto must have too, considering they share the same eye. I would suggest you leave, being here is already a felony, Shikaku said. Kakashi sighed. Again he wouldn't get the answers he wanted. He was about to pull down his headband when a hand stopped him. Don't worry, I won't be here too long. When I come out I'll tell you the truth. Naruto pulled the headband the rest of the way down and then smiled a brilliantly bright smile, and he decided to take him at his word. Kakashi turned to leave, locking the bars behind him. He looked up to Shikaku, wondering if the man would be leaving with him, but he was more weary looking than he remembered, slightly pale and slightly irritated, and he wasn't going to stay if the Nara was ready to blow. So he left, leaving the two behind him. Every time I think I'm onto something you shatter it carelessly. Naruto chuckled as he wiped the brick dust off his back. Haku, you're taking things too personal. Too personal. You came to me. You asked for my advice, but you've been hiding everything from me. He yelled through the bars. Still Naruto didn't react. Even now you're hiding tons of secrets. You know the name of the person who's trying to destroy Konoha. Obito. A Megakure. You're still hiding things. Aren't you? Shikaku was mad. I will stand by you. That was what he had said, but this was too much. He wasn't an idiot dog that was okay with the bare minimum scraps wagging his tail. He hated this. He had thought that Naruto would rely on him, but he always felt in the dark. Like he was playing shogi in the midst of night with no moonlight. You won't let me in on anything. Anything. Just let me look at the future. You. No. Shikaku repeated in shock. Here he was pouring out his heart, something a Nara would never dignify himself to do, but he was high-strung and emotionally frail right now. And Naruto could see it. It was clear how much the information and memories affected him. Naruto walked up to the bars, looking up to the Nara. Perhaps he had been a bit cruel. Right now you think you're helpless and useless. You're very sensitive as well, but there is no need to feel that. I came to you because I have faith in your abilities. I don't need you to look into the future, I need you to focus all your energy right here. Naruto pulled the Nara's head closer so he couldn't escape. I can't have you lost in a future I'm trying to destroy. I need you. Shikaku felt his heart lift a bit, and Naruto saw it as well since he released him. Though there are some things I can tell you, I suppose, things just between us. Shikaku watched Naruto turn so he could rest his back on the bars. I'm guessing you figured out Kakashi's role. Shikaku took a few calming breaths. The Haddock boy, right? He was your teacher. Can't say I saw that coming. Didn't seem like the teacher type. He wasn't. Naruto started. In my future things were different. Obito had died and Kakashi had received the Sharingan. Shikaku looked amazed. Kakashi was well known for being a prodigy, and if he had the Sharingan, what a threat. He was housed by guilt and sadness. The Kakashi I knew had lost everything precious to him. Shikaku couldn't imagine what that statement really meant. Despite knowing I was alone after my parents died, he didn't come. Despite being Minato's last student, he didn't help me. Naruto was letting him in on more than he thought he would. Minato, Kushina and the Haddock's teammates were long dead in Naruto's time. Sorrow and guilt prevented him from getting close. He was made a teacher, but no students had ever passed his initial exam and were sent back to the academy often. As he thought Haddock wasn't a good teacher, he was made my teacher much later. It was his duty to guide and teach the Uchiha on my team since they shared the Sharingan. That made sense, but he favored him. Casting us to the side often to specially train him, to cater to his needs. He tried to control him and change his path, but in the end he failed. Another leg. So if he corrected the past correctly, would that leg not form? He confessed to me much later that it was one of his greatest regrets and he had wished things had been different. Naruto downed the cup of alcohol long since offered to him. Kakashi loved to talk about the past these days, but when it regarded him and the team he would rather do without. One cup wasn't enough to get drunk though. He was tempted to pour more, but he was scared that he drank too much, he'd forget. Like his teacher had often begun to try to do. He thought back to what the man had been talking about and chuckled darkly. Kakashi, isn't it funny, the ones that you threw away are the ones that stayed. He saw the man's jaw set and his fist clench, but that dark smile continued to spread. He was in no mood to coddle the man who brought up such annoying memories, and the one you tried to keep so close ran away the furthest. Bam. The fist slammed into the wall beside his head and he couldn't help the dark laugh at the pained look that was staring back at him. You've become too cold, Naruto. But I never hated the man. He was too broken by the time he met us to function properly. He did what he had thought was best. Naruto gave a crooked smile. Just stating facts. He must have been important to you, Shikaku noted. Naruto stood properly, pushing off the bars and walking further into the room. He was one of the few people who had lasted close to the end. Sometimes if I had no one else, he was there always reminiscing. So that was why Naruto knew the details of the mission so well. Naruto cringed as he felt the back of his hair being pulled roughly. And though he knew he wouldn't, sometimes Naruto just wished anyone would just end it. Just why is it then? I can see why you've gotten close to Kakashi, you want to save him too. Shikaku saw Naruto stop and they were quiet and he wondered if he said something wrong. I mean Kakashi was an important mentor to you, a teacher and friend. Naruto still remained quiet and with his back facing Shikaku and he couldn't tell if he had been right. Yes, I suppose. Naruto finally said and Shikaku released a breath he didn't even know he was holding. But not quite, not just for that between me and you. Naruto turned with that familiar nostalgic smile on his face. We were. Kakashi pulled a bit harder and Naruto couldn't help closing his eyes. And in that instant brutally and savagely, skin met skin in a fury of desperation. After who knows how long he let go and Naruto could finally breathe again. Why is it you seem so far away? Naruto closed his eyes in the memory, then opened them again. We were lovers. It was only 2 days and word was out that Naruto was off the hook. And it was big news because there was no way that if Naruto was a real spy, that they would let him go. Kakashi didn't know why he felt so relieved and yet deep down he knew. He had been feeling weird ever since the mission. And at first he had blamed his eye. The eye had a strange attachment to its owner reminding him of the blonde, even when he was out of sight. Then he thought it was because the child was not normal. He spoke like a man, war-beaten and ghosting through life. Saying things that didn't match his appearance. Maybe that was why he couldn't get the words to stop replaying in his head. But it was when he was alone at night staring out the window of his apartment that he realized that wasn't it either. When he lay back with no headband, no mask and stared up at the stars wondering if Naruto shared the same side he was seeing. If Naruto was looking up at 1,000 stars and feeling just as lonely, that's when he knew something was off. He frowned. Never had he had such thoughts before. Not once had he ever wished Obito or Rin, not even Minato, to come to his side so he wouldn't be lonely. And they were precious people to him without a doubt, but even he needed his space from him. But the image of Naruto, the mature blue eye staring at him, threw him into the depths of his soul. Whispering words that could have multiple meanings. I like you, take it off, open it. It all made his heart race in such an unforgiving and sinful way that he thought he couldn't breathe. That made the room just a bit too hot. That made him want to reach out to Tant's skin and calm down. Everything about that child was like a command and his body and mind reacted instantly, and it scared him. How was it that someone he barely knew could possess him? And then the guilt would roll in. Like a tsunami he felt the shame and disgust because the one he was having such complicated feelings for was not only a child, but a boy. It wasn't unheard of, but it wasn't accepted. You needed a woman to continue the clan name, to bring growth to a village. Men just don't cut it. It was frowned upon, looked at with disgust, and he was no stranger. Hadn't he seen 2 men releasing in the shadows and glared with utter hate and revulsion not too long ago? And now feelings he felt seemed to overpower reasoning were bringing him to that same place. He hated himself. Kakashi continued his walk through the village. He hadn't seen or heard from Obito all morning, which in itself was strange. Minato had given them the day off and Rin had taken it upon herself to get some hours at the hospital. Ever since the mission she had been dedicating more of herself to her medical training that, like Naruto, again his name appeared, she would be strong enough to make sure none of her friends died. And he admired her for that, Obito had fawned. But now after diligent morning training he had nothing on his mind to do, he needed a hobby. Something to occupy his thoughts and distract them before they idly found their own way back to. He felt a heat behind his closed eye and froze. He didn't have to think too much when it came to this feeling. He had begun registering what person had what chakra signature, but this one came automatic, and as his eye got just a bit warmer, he touched it softly. Only one person brought this feeling. Well, if it isn't Kakashi. Didn't think I'd bump into you so soon. He took a deep breath chanting the words that had commanded him not too long ago. Calm down, and then turned around to see the monster that was clearly turning his world upside down. Naruto. Kakashi watched as Naruto and, forever by his side, Shikaku walked toward him. Both lazily strolling, and no one would think that one was recently accused of being a spy. Kakashi watched as Shikaku strangely looked him up and down and felt bothered by it but refused to comment. He would not lose his cool in front of this man. No missions. Naruto, ever casual, smiled at him and Kakashi felt he had no choice but to face him properly. No, teacher said he had something important to do today and that it was cancelled. Kakashi did notice the darkened flash in Shikaku's eyes as he seemed to deduce what his teacher was up to, and he also noticed the sly smile that brushed Naruto's lips, but then again he was beginning to notice everything about Naruto. Anyway, since we seemed fated that we meet so soon, should we take off? Perplexed, Kakashi raised an eyebrow at the blonde, who laughed. I said I'd tell you the truth, right? Kakashi jumped. He had said that, but he wasn't sure if he would. After all, the boy had no obligation to tell him anything, certainly not his life, but God did Kakashi want to know. Naruto, came a slow drawl as Shikaku, not looking hard-pressed, sent a glance to him. Naruto shrugged it off, waving the older man off. It's fine, I'll meet up with you later at any rate. Shikaku gave a heavy sigh and then sent a tired look at Kakashi that sent a shiver down his spine. Now that he thought about it, Shikaku had yet to say a word to him. Fine. What a drag, he moaned as the Nara turned and left, not even bothering to look back. Well then shall we go for a walk? Naruto smiled. They had gotten to some training field, but he hadn't been paying too much attention to because Naruto had just unleashed something similar to a brain bomb. I'm from the future, he should have been mad. He had asked for the truth and the kid was telling him stories, but for some reason all he felt was way he talked, reacted, even walked. The things he said, the brokenness in his eyes, it all made sense. There was no way in the child's short lifespan that he could possess that much depth and maturity, and that was saying something because people thought he was mature. But even Kakashi felt like a child to the shorter male walking beside him. And that's why he wasn't mad. You're taking it quite well. Naruto smirked playfully, and Kakashi had to look away before his cheeks burned. I believe you. A delicate chuckle sounded. I knew you would. Kakashi gave a sideways glare. He hated the way that he seemed to read him as if he knew him perfectly. And how would you know that, twerp? What are you, 7? He saw the twitch on the blonde eyebrow and wanted to laugh. I'm 10 right now, you bastard, and I'll have you know I was much older in my time. Kakashi scoffed. Course you were. Naruto stopped his tracks and stomped his foot, finally acting the age he had come back as. I was 27 before I came back here. Older than you, so you should be looking up at me. Believe it. The fact that Kakashi had to look down did nothing for Naruto's case, but he loved the way Naruto's cheeks reddened. No, he didn't love it, he couldn't. So why did you come back so young? Ah. Was I there? In your future, I mean. Naruto calmed down and continued walking, Kakashi tagging along. Yay, you were there. He said the word slow again, speaking as if they had multiple meanings. In my time you were older. I'm older than you now. Shut up. I mean you were a lot older, 14. 15. Around that many years older. Naruto's stumped face showed how observant he was in the future, and it made Kakashi sigh. Geez, that's a lot. Kakashi couldn't picture himself that old and alive. Yay. And there it was again, the slow speech and soft eyes, with a nostalgic smile. You were an old man, alright. Kakashi should have felt insulted, but somehow the words didn't seem cruel. He had to change the subject. So why come back at 10? Naruto blinked owlishly as he looked over at him. Honestly, I have no idea. The time reversal jutsu was not one that had been attempted often, there isn't a lot of research on it. Not to mention there wasn't enough preparation to ensure perfection. I was never this girly looking in my time either. Why Kakashi felt that was a good thing he didn't know. I'm assuming that these are just effects of the jutsu being haphazardly done. Why this age? Why this look? I have no idea, it just turned out this way. Kakashi fell silent, he wanted to ask more questions, but he wondered if he could. If he had a right to know. Minato had told him nothing because it hadn't concerned him. This was confidential information that usually he would not be privy to. Why are you telling me this? Naruto stopped walking again, and Kakashi stopped as well, standing across from him. A gentle breeze blew, chasing leaves around carelessly, not minding where they fell, and Kakashi watched a smile so gentle that it pulled at his heart widen. Well, cause you ask, silly. It was a touching moment that Kakashi wished to imprint in his brain, but it ended too quickly. Naruto. A shadow appeared as the Anbu came out of nowhere. It had been a while since Kakashi couldn't sense people coming close, so the action startled him. The fact that Naruto didn't jump proved he had a ways to go. You are being summoned. Come to the Hokage's tower roof immediately. Then the shadow left. Kakashi wasn't sure if he should say something, seeing the thoughtful look in Naruto's eye, but he didn't have to. Naruto looked back at Kakashi with a smile. Want to come? I'm sure it will be worthwhile to see. He wouldn't normally because it wasn't his place or business. But Naruto was giving him permission to get close. Telling him it was okay for him to know more, and he couldn't hide that he wanted in. Yay. He had expected them to jump over rooftops. He knew for a fact Naruto could, but the young blonde seemed less willing to hurry. Instead they walked leisurely through the village. And Kakashi was disgustingly happy. Naruto was a good few inches shorter than him, so he could with ease look down and watch the boy up close, and though he tried to tell himself that he was going to regret this later, he couldn't help trying to imprint the memory in his brain. Did you have a lover? Naruto stopped blinking and Kakashi almost choked. What had possessed him to ask that? Admittedly he was curious, but he had more class than that, didn't he? Well, I wasn't expecting that question. Kakashi wanted to go dig a hole. I mean, after everything I told, there are plenty of other questions to ask. Dig a hole and die in it. Just forget it, Kakashi said, rubbing the bridge of his mask-covered nose. They continued walking in silence for a bit before Naruto's voice sliced through. Kinda. Kakashi knew the meaning of the word instantly. Naruto was responding to his question, but his brow wrinkled. What an ambiguous response. How do you kinda have a lover? Isn't it either yes or no? The words came out snippier than he thought, and Naruto gave him a deep sideways look that he just couldn't read. He probably said something wrong with how silent Naruto was. Yep, he had ruined the moment. The words came out softly and hesitant. It could have been love, in another time maybe. Again Naruto gave him that unreadable look that made him think that he was testing him to figure it out on his own. I told you, we were in a time of war. It's hard to differentiate love and desperation. Maybe it was love, but at the time we were all too broken to care. The words he felt should have been said more sadly, like it hurt, but Naruto said them carelessly and cold. Too broken. What would it take to get to that point? Did he or she? I meant she. And he was tripping over words again. Naruto's patient smile made him seem more childish. Ugh, did they at least say they love you? Naruto stopped and Kakashi thought maybe he finally went too far. But innocent confusion crossed the young boy's face. I don't remember. Now Kakashi was confused. How could someone be lovers and not say I love you? Was this why he said kinda? There was no time, no peace, no energy. Energy? Kakashi repeated, completely lost at this point. Naruto smiled. He continued walking Kakashi in tow. There was no energy to hope that it could last at that point. We all either lived in the moment or the past. That's pretty ironic. And it was, for Naruto the time traveler, to say that they lived in the past he was currently rewriting. Naruto's laughter lightened Kakashi's heart. Eerily ironic. Kakashi was done. He didn't want to bring up something that brought such melancholy to that beautiful blue eye. And luck would have it that they had arrived at the tower. By the way, Kakashi looked over at the whiskered blonde. About what you said before. Kakashi had said a lot, many things he regret, so what did he want to bring up now? My lover, you know. Kakashi's breath hitched, not sure what he would say or how to prepare himself for it. And with Naruto rubbing the of his neck nervously, he couldn't help gulping. A blue eye looked at him and he felt he couldn't breathe. He was a guy. And then Naruto disappeared, leaving Kakashi in utter shock. Naruto liked men. His face bloomed red, he was completely undone. When Kakashi reached the roof, he wasn't sure what he had been expecting to see, but he hadn't visualized this. Many of the elders scratched that every clan head was there, including the village elders and the Hokage. They all sat lined at a long table staring at Naruto, who was standing solitarily in the middle of the roof waiting. Kakashi? What are you doing here? Kakashi turned at the familiar voice of his teacher, who was standing off to the side next to Shikaku, who didn't seem surprised that he was there. Kakashi walked over to them. I had been talking to Naruto when he was summoned, he invited me to come. Minato looked at him silently, and though Kakashi wanted to say his eyes were bizarrely similar to Naruto's, they weren't. The shade was slightly different and certainly the depth. Minato's didn't have the depth that made you get lost in them, or that seemed like they were looking right into your heart, only Naruto had that. So you know. It wasn't a question, but it told Kakashi exactly why Minato's attention had been so divided lately. Yay. Minato sighed, there was no fighting it after all, what's done was done. Oh well, stand over here, no need to get in the way. Kakashi moved to his teacher's side. What's going on? Kakashi asked rightfully. Just listen, Haddock, they're about to explain now. Kakashi looked at Shikaku, who was more focused than he had ever seen before. Then he looked over as the Hokage stood ready to make his announcement. He couldn't see this ending well. Naruto, Sarutobi said, watching the calm child. They had discussed the situation for many long hours in the last 3 days and couldn't find any reason to not believe the boy. The only problem was a Megakure, to help or not to help. Jiraiya would be in the village tomorrow and they would discuss that portion in length, but they had all been curious about one thing the boy had said. I say this only due to one fact, and that is that I would be there as well on the front lines. The amount of ego to go into that line was outrageous. To say that all they would need is 5 to 6 people in order to settle a civil war because he would be there. There were just some things one needed to see to believe. We have agreed that what you say may be the truth, but there is still the question of your abilities. Shikaku scoffed, and Kakashi snapped to him to see a mischievous smile on his face like he knew something they didn't. Therefore we will be testing your ability by rank, do you accept? Naruto deadpanned, could he decline? He had gone through this crap with Shikaku already, and though it took a couple of spars, since he was so nice, Shikaku learned. And now again they wanted to test if he was strong. Did saying he had been Hokage mean nothing? Sure, not like there's much choice. Shikaru as well as some other elders smiled because honestly there wasn't. Sarutobi smiled and continued. Indeed, we will begin with the lowest of ranks, Genin to the highest, Anbu. Of course, because we all have important things to do, you will be timed. Naruto didn't think he'd need it, but he stayed silent. For Genin 5 minutes, Chunin 7, Jonin 12, and Anbu 20. If you do not defeat your opponent within the time limit, you lose. Do you accept these terms? Genin to Jounin would be relatively easy had it been a fair fight, but he was sure that they were going to bring the best they had in each group. Still, no matter who they brought, it shouldn't take too long to handle them. I accept. Sarutobi nodded, then brought his hand to show a small table off to the side. Over there are weapons of all kind, choose the ones that suit you and we will begin. Naruto glanced over at the table. He was sure they spared no expense to give him the pick of the litter, but he wasn't here to kill. This was a spar, and though he was sure he could pick a number of good ones that would end some battles in a heartbeat, he knew the moment he actually killed a Konoha ninja he'd be locked up so quick. No need, I have the basics in my pouch, that's good enough for this. Shikaru was impressed, a good choice the boy had made, but the amount of ego he needed to not only agree to the terms, but to say he didn't need much. The conditions they had made were by far unfavorable to him. It was mainly the Hyuga and Uchiha that had posed the terms, trying to cage the boy and humble him. But the others were fairly lenient and had Naruto called out on the unjust conditions they would have easily negotiated. But Naruto stretched his arms calmly, not an ounce of pressure reflected in his form, as if it didn't matter what they threw at him he'd win. And from Shikaku's smirk he could back it up. Then without any more hesitation, let us begin. The moment that the third sat down, a Chunin that had been sitting behind him raised a blue flag and the roof door opened to reveal a young boy. Young, in Naruto's eyes, but the boy probably had a couple of inches over him. And that bothered him. He didn't realize until this moment how insulting his predicament was until he saw the genin. He was sure that the genin was going to enter the Chunin exam soon, that he had completed many missions successfully, and that he probably graduated at the top of his class. He was confident, walking closer with a smirk as he looked Naruto up and down, taking in his small size. But damn it, Naruto had gotten Sage mode, become Kage and defeated S-rank ninja. To even assume that a genin could take him was insulting him too much. The blue flag rose again, and Naruto figured that was the signal for go, because the genin charged at him with a kunai in hand. And then, a blink. Kakashi had missed the fight in a blink. His eyelids had closed momentarily, just as the genin ran straight for a seemingly irritated Naruto, and then they opened to see Naruto sitting on the poor genin, one of his arms pulled back, and the kunai that the boy had used against his own throat. All in a blink. Wah. Kakashi sputtered, but a chuckle caught his attention, and he turned to see Shikaku relaxed and smiling. 5 seconds, this should pass fairly quickly. The clan heads were impressed. They knew that surely this child could defeat a genin, but they wanted to see how exactly he would do it. Fast was the only word one could use. He was showing off. He knew they were trying to humble him and pressure him with the time limit, and he had basically said, "You don't want to believe me? Well, screw that, I'll make you apologize for doubting me." If his had been a game of shogi, then Naruto had started with a strong and fierce start that would intimidate a weaker opponent. Shikamaru smiled, but they weren't that foolish. If he wanted to make them apologize, he was going to have to do better than that. Shikamaru watched a mischievous smile stretch over the young boy's face as he looked at him. Shikamaru smiled back. "Damn brat. Very good, Naruto. Let's continue." Sarutobi smiled. Naruto got off the young genin who was shaking a bit and let him escape. A green flag went up and he was bristling with excitement. He was going to have these old goats on their knees in awe of him. Naruto sighed. He knew who the opponent was without having to overhear the clan heads whisper words of confusion. Where is he? Doesn't he know what he was asked? How much longer do we wait? The blur of dark blue hit the roof and Kakashi's eyes widened in recognition. Am I late? Obito. Kakashi yelled. Naruto smiled as he walked to the Chunin. He was learning, or at least trying to see past the future that had been ruined thanks to him, and look at what could be now that he was alive and here. Nope, I think you're right on time. Obito looked up at the blonde that they had announced as his opponent and smiled, taking his hand so that he could stand. Well, good, cause I'm ready to go. When they got into their respective positions, the flag went up. Naruto had expected Obito to dive right in. After all, he sometimes reminded him of himself in his younger days, but Obito stood tall. You know, I never did thank you. Obito's jaw clenched as he looked down. If you hadn't been there, I would've. Obito jerked his head up. I didn't even really want to fight you today, after all, I still owe you. And Obito. Naruto sighed and he stopped talking. If you really want to thank me, if you really think you owe me. Naruto gave him a playful look and a cheeky smile. Then come at me with all you got and make this fight more interesting than the last one. That was all Obito needed to bristle him. Give him all he had. Obito smiled. Fine then. Don't regret this. Hand signs flew, and though Naruto could intercept, he was still having a personal bet with the old coot sitting in the back. He met the Uchiha leader's eyes that darkened with mirth, as he had probably chosen him and knew the jutsu he had started. But Naruto had been on the receiving end of this particular jutsu as well, and he knew what it was as well. High release. Great fireball jutsu. A large ball of fire hurled at him, but he kept his gaze locked on the Uchiha leader, as if they were playing a game of chicken to see who would flinch first. Naruto won. Naruto. Kakashi watched a fireball slam into its target. Even he wasn't dumb enough to take on Obito's fireball head on. But Obito didn't look victorious, instead he was looking around, Sharingan activated. And he wasn't the only one. The clan heads was as well, staring at the battlefield with a furrowed brow. Didn't mean to frighten you. Obito jerked a 180 to see Naruto unharmed behind him. Scaredy cat. After all, he had not totally forgive future Obito, no matter what time he was in. Obito threw a couple of shuriken to put some distance between them, and Naruto allowed it, falling back. Shadow shuriken. Naruto looked up in time to dodge the large windmill shuriken, then the second one with gymnastic ease. And what fond memories it brought back when Sasuke had used that very technique against Zabuza. Demon windmill. Triple blade. Naruto jumped from the memory to dodge the third blade, only to have the second one come back. Wires. Again the first rotated and he had to stay light on his feet. He grit his teeth. They did well choosing his opponents, but he couldn't waste time. He kicked one of the shuriken down so it dug into the floor. The second one with precision similar to that of an Uchiha, he cut the ninja wire that should have been relatively invisible, but the third one he hesitated. Obito didn't know why, but he saw the brief pause in his step that allowed the last shuriken wrap around him. The only thing that separated Naruto from a lobbed head was the kunai that he managed to reach up just in time to stop it. But Obito wouldn't hesitate. Naruto was already proving himself skilled and honestly he couldn't stave off the fear. A fear that told him he could never win against this kid. That told him he ate chunins from snack because they couldn't fill him in a proper meal. He pulled the wire to his mouth while his prey was bound and flew through seals. High release. Fire Dragon Flame Blast. Kakashi watched as his longtime teammate created a large dragon out of flames. He had yet to see the technique and had to admit Obito was indeed getting stronger. Everyone watched on bated breath as the dragon soared toward the one-eyed blonde. It connected. Yes. Came a quiet hiss from the clan's head, but Shikamaru didn't miss it. What will you do now? The time was now at 4 minutes. Obito was smiling in victory as well as the attack landed. He knew that Naruto had not escaped as he could still feel the tenseness in the wire, but the longer he watched the more his smile faded because the flames that were meant to eat away at everything and disperse were powerfully lingering as if being held captive. And then in an instant they dissipated and there in the middle still wrapped in wire with a smile was Naruto, not even singed. How? Kakashi said aloud in awe. Wind nature. He looked up to see Minato not necessarily talking to him but watching with rapt attention. I think we've burned enough time. Naruto laughed and the wire fell away like string, the shuriken clanking to the ground. That it burned. Naruto said with a dangerous smile, and then Obito lost him. Disappearing right in front of his Sharingan eyes. A hand gripped his arm and he attempted to slip away, but a foot to his back threw his balance off. He slammed into the ground and his body was locked in a position he couldn't tell, but he knew it was over. 5 minutes, seems he was playing too much, Shikaku said with a smile. He would love to play a game of shogi with this kid, Shikamaru thought. The child was more devious than he let on. He allowed the Uchiha child to show his best techniques to prove how powerless they were against him, and then disappearing out of Sharingan sight more than once was plain mockery, and from the way that the Uchiha leader clenched his fist under the table, he understood the meaning too. I'm stronger than you. This was just getting better and better, he couldn't wait for the next fight. Naruto, so far you've fought 2 battles in a row and won magnificently, would you like time to rest? Even Shikaku pouted because he wanted the boy to continue to prove himself and see what other tricks he had up his sleeve. No, I'm perfectly fine, we can continue. Shikamaru smiled, of course the boy was fine. Throughout both fights Naruto had yet to reveal any ninjutsu or high-level taijutsu. He had played defensive and then crushed them instantly with speed. It was amazing. This child was clearly dominating the arena with grace, and he was thrilled. Boy, Mr. Nara, calm down a bit, I can feel your excitement from here. Shikamaru's eyes widened as he looked at the mocking smile on Naruto's face. It was as if those blue eyes saw right through his calm facade. This boy just kept getting better. Naruto looked away from the Nara leader with a sigh. Of course he of all people would be getting off on this, but he had to focus now. Next was Jounin, that was 12 minutes. The red flag went up and Naruto couldn't even say he was surprised as his opponent walked forward. Long black hair tied up in an elegant high ponytail. Firm jaw, tall physique, headband crossing straight over a curse tattoo and white pupilless eyes cold as ice. Brilliant Hyuga. He had figured that the Hyuga and Uchiha would send out one of their own, he just hadn't been sure of the rank. Naruto closed his eyes. When was the last time he had fought a Hyuga? Hinata. When he said he was going to the war front. But seriously. Neji. Neji, who had been like a caged bird and breathed nothing but hate and unchangeable destiny. What would he think of Naruto time traveling and changing the past? The thought made him laugh. You're strong indeed. Naruto opened his eyes coldly, not appreciating the way the man disrupted him from a happy memory. But I cannot lose this battle. Most likely cause he would be punished, Naruto thought as he watched the Jounin fall into his stance. Arms wide and welcoming but deadly if nothing else. It is your destiny to lose here. The word made his eye twitch, just like Neji. And he felt the rage pour over him. This was not the future he wanted Neji to have. To live this way, to be raised in a word that believed that crap. My destiny. Everyone on the roof felt their heart quicken as the feeling of anger washed over the area, clearly coming from one person. If you really believe in all that destiny crap, then you're nothing than a fool that's given up. Kakashi didn't know why what the Hyuga had said bothered Naruto, but it was intense. They could all feel it, especially the Jounin that stood as his opponent, who was clearly tenser than before. I won't let you drag that SHTIAS belief with you into the future. If that's what you really believe, I'll crush it right here. Shikamaru couldn't even hide behind the lazy facade that he always had. Because right before his very eyes he was going to watch the future change. The flag went up and Naruto knew he would have to change tactics. Genin, even Uchihas were offensive in nature, so bending them like currents in the river was the best way to handle them, not Hyugas. They were like walls or praying mantis. They could wait forever until their unsuspecting prey fell within range and then instant death. His victory over Neji was thanks partially to the 9 tails whose chakra had reopened the ones that Neji had viciously closed. But now he didn't have that. With the 9 tails gone it would be harder and he could go Sage, but that was still an insult and he was hoping to save that surprise for the Anbu. So now how was he going to tackle this? Obito blinked at the 2 opponents standing, waiting and wasting time. He was sitting on the ground on the sidelines because though he said he was simply tired from chakra use, the truth was that Naruto had the grip of a viper and everywhere that the kid touched burned with most likely a deep bruise. Shikaku had smirked almost knowingly at him and he looked away with a huff, but this they couldn't stand there forever, someone had to move. He was hoping to see more of Naruto's skills. When Rin had told him that Naruto had been the one to save his life, he laughed at her. He had met the kid who insinuated that being a ninja was easy. There was no way the kid had saved him. Then the clan head had approached him with testing the kid's strength. There was no explanation as to why and he had simply accepted so that he could thank him, because even though he didn't believe the kid could have saved his life, he had. And the fight had opened his eyes to a new fact: Naruto was strong. It was hard to see from afar, but when you were in it each move was calculated, his speed unreal, and the physical strength dangerous. Never again would he spar against that monster, that was for sure. Geez, when are they gonna start? Obito moaned. A minute had fully passed already and they were still standing there, neither moving. Pay attention, idiot. Can't you see they have? Obito didn't appreciate the scoff from his teammate, but he took another look at the 2 standing waiting he had assumed and noticed suddenly the Hyuga's Byakugan was active. It was in that moment of realization that Naruto disappeared. Obito's mouth dropped, he was faster than their fight. Naruto slipped in the Hyuga's range using his small size to crouch beneath him. The Hyuga quickly adjusted, dodging the kick to his face. He tried to put space between them, but the little brat was using move after move, not leaving a centimeter of space between them, and all the Hyuga could do was dodge and block. He grit his teeth. Gentle fist. Naruto glared. One blow body. Chakra erupted from the Hyuga's pores, and Naruto somersaulted away, making sure to clear the distance of the trigram radius. The Hyuga was furious. This was supposed to be a child, but clearly he had experience with fighting Hyuga, and he was strong. Each blow he had attempted to land was full of chakra that he knew if they hit would without a doubt incapacitate him. Who was this person? Naruto cracked his neck, his body looking relaxed, but his eyes anything but. Hey you. The Hyuga broke off from his thoughts to look at the smaller male. What's your name? Those pupilless eyes looked at him dubiously but conceded. Hisashi Hyuga. Naruto had been known to curse his luck in the future many times because nothing ever seemed to work in his favor. But now, surely someone had heard his prayer. What were the odds that the old bat would choose Neji's father to face him? He couldn't hide the smile that bloomed devilishly. Well, Hisashi, my name's Naruto and I'm going to rock your world. The only problem with this was Hisashi was calmer. He seemed to be content he just spoke foolishness. But Naruto didn't have the history between them to connect with him. Oh well, he'd just have to do it in 10 minutes. You were talking about destiny crap and whatnot earlier. Does that have to do with what's under your headband? Hisashi was confused by this person. 1 second he was angry, then a fierce opponent, and now he wanted to talk. Surely he knew if time ran out he would be the loser. But even more importantly he knew. Hisashi touched his forehead protector. Then looked at the saddened blue eye of his opponent. He really knew quite a bit about the Hyuga clan. I bear the mark of my destiny. We all have one that leads and directs us, it is inescapable. Naruto didn't change. In this world people are chosen by fate. No matter what, we cannot change that. We can only follow the path given to us. Naruto sighed and casually scratched the back of his neck like he wasn't being watched or tested for that matter. I see, so you don't mind that even though you're better than your brother, you got branded. Hisashi wasn't the only Hyuga that bristled. I just think it's strange that even though you were born from the same father, one of you becomes leader of the clan and the other has to be condemned to servitude. He watched in pleasure as Hisashi's jaw set. And now you and all your children after you will now have to bear without a choice the mark that you call destiny. Silence. Hisashi easily jumped the distance between them and began using his gentle fist. But he was in rage and Naruto was watching him pensively with a mocking smile. Why so mad, Hyuga? You accepted it, right? That's your destiny, right? Bound in that cage along with all those who are dear to you, but that's just your fate, right? Shut up. Everyone watched in horror at the words spewing from pink lips, even the Hokage could feel the pain that the Hyuga was feeling. Naruto was going too far. Why was he using such psychological warfare? Not everyone was okay with the Hyuga's way, but they were strong and traditional, and interfering would only create more problems than they'd solve. A chipped stone in the ground made Naruto lose focus and trip slightly, just enough for Hisashi with all his rage to slam a gentle fist into his arm and throw him off balance. 1, 2, 3, 8 trigrams. 64 palm. Naruto could only grit his teeth at the sudden rush of infiltrating chakra between Neji and his dad. Dad was definitely stronger. The last one sent Naruto's small body flying across the roof into the wall, cracking and sinking him painfully into the rock. "Naruto!" Kakashi yelled, ready to run to him, but the firm hand of his teacher kept him back. Kakashi had never disliked his idol so much as that moment and was tempted to Chidori the man's hand off. "Teacher, Naruto needs. There's still 5 minutes left." Kakashi turned to the lazy-eyed Nara. Had he not seen the same thing he had? Naruto was hit by the Hyuga's infamous technique. There was no way he would recover. "You don't accept it, do you?" It was a whisper, but everyone heard it, and Hisashi watched with shocked eyes as the child whose chakra he was sure he severed was pulling himself out of the rock. "How I severed your chakra? You shouldn't be able to even stand." A bloody smile of nostalgia crossed Naruto's face. "I get it, being caught in a destiny that seems so f***ing fruitless, that chains you and leaves you powerless. I get it, I was a failure, but that's why all the more the reason." They watched sharp canines flash as an oppressive wave of intent flooded the area. "Shut the FCK up about that destiny crap. If you don't like it that much, then change it." Hisashi felt the rage build inside as well. If it was that simple. It wasn't his choice to be born second. To get this mark, to be looked down on, though he was definitely strong. He had never chosen this life, and he knew that everyone close to him, his wife and children, they would all bear this curse simply because of a few seconds. What did this kid know? Of course he. The flash of blonde appeared before him before he could react, and a fist collided with his left cheek. "If you hate it, say something." Hisashi caught his footing just in time to block another swing, but Naruto was relentless. "Are you okay with this? You living this way, your future son burdened with this destiny crap with that mark?" Hisashi ducked in and twisted, desperately slamming a hand in the child's gut, sending Naruto skidding back with a bit more blood running down his lips. "Of course I hate it." No one could even breathe at this point as the Hyuga leader watched, standing as destiny changed. "Of course I don't want that. Of course I think it's not fair. I don't want my son to suffer through that. I don't want to be chained." Tears broke through the Hyuga's firm emotional wall. And he covered his face in shame. Why was what this kid affecting him so much? "Then don't." Came a choked whisper. "Unlike me, you're not a failure, you're smart." The tears wouldn't stop as he looked at the one-eyed blonde. "You can change things. And if they don't listen, screw them, because I promise." Naruto flashed stepped again, but Hisashi was too emotionally strained to focus. "I'll crush that Hyuga way." An uppercut to the jaw and Hisashi was flying across the roof as well, hitting the floor hard. "I won't allow you to suffer, I swear it." Hisashi couldn't move. The kid hit hard, he'd give him that much, but even if he could physically move he probably wouldn't because tears were overflowing and he had never felt so blessed to have lost a fight. He had never felt so free. 11 minutes, Shikaku said, breaking the silence. "Naruto wins. But he needs a medic, I suggest a break, right Hokage?" Sarutobi was barely focusing. "Ah. Yes, Naruto wins. Please tend to his wounds." Two medics appeared from behind as Naruto fell on his rump, breathing heavy. Shikaku walked over, talking in whispers only they could understand, and everyone else was in silence, still attempting to digest what had just taken place. Shikaru couldn't help the childishly wide eyes or the smile that slid over his face that gave children nightmares. He was sure he looked positively frightening, and no one had ever seen him make such a face, but this kid was amazing. "Take the Hyuga down, quickly, efficiently," mocked the elder a bit. No doubt that was what they were all thinking he would do, but of course not. Naruto was too unpredictable for that. Breaking down traditions, hitting the heart, toppling realities, isn't that what he's been doing already? Shikaru looked to the side to watch the Hyuga leader staring at his branded son laying on the floor, an arm covering his eyes as the medics attended to him. What must the man feel? No one liked the Hyuga's old written in stone ways, but they had gotten used to it. The Hyugas were their own, and they would handle their own business. They often spouted things of destiny and fate, brainwashing techniques to render weak-minded individuals to obedience, but you got used to it. Naruto refused. Naruto refused to accept such a thing as natural and threatened it must still go on in the future, Shikaru deduced. Why else did it seem so personal to Naruto? To feel the rage from the boy was unforgiving. Had he acted on that rage, Hisashi would not be alive now, but it had changed. Changed because of the name. Naruto had mentioned the son, he must know him personally, that's why he was so angry. But still. Naruto was amazing. It wasn't that he couldn't have avoided the hits, Shikaku was sure with the amount of speed and his wind affinity he could have deflected them, but he hadn't. He took them on purpose. The only thing he didn't understand was why. Huh? Naruto, brow raised, looked up at a quite unhappy Nara. "I said why? Why take the hits? Why not end it quickly? Surely you could have talked to him without getting." Shikaku watched Naruto wipe the blood from his lip indifferently. "Injured?" Naruto sighed, letting the medic Nin heal his wounds. He hadn't gone full sage, but he had utilized natural energy just to keep him functional, so not all was broken. He wouldn't have listened. Shikaku's frown deepened. "That's it? That's your only reason?" Naruto pouted. "It's complicated. You can't just talk to people like that, you gotta you know, like. Naruto flailed his arms much to the annoyance of the medics trying to find words. Men understand better with fist, you know. Shikaku deadpanned. You really are a moron, aren't you? It took an hour in which they managed to collect themselves properly. Naruto was ready after 30 minutes, but the Hokage had said the lunch break was much needed. But even that was over, and it was time for the fourth and final test. Anbu. Originally we were going to limit you to 20 minutes. The third said as Naruto stretched out his rested limbs. But we can all agree putting a time limit on you would prove pointless. Naruto smiled, they were starting to get it. If the fight goes on too long we shall end it though, do you accept this? Naruto was tempted to say that they could time him, he didn't care, but he wasn't that stupid. Each opponent that they had thrown at him had proven harder than the last, top of the class indeed. And now they were going to choose an Anbu level nin. He was not going to take any risks, he would mostly have to go sage as well as use his ninjutsu, something he's been restraining since he got here. And not cause it was somewhat a dead giveaway of who he was, but because Shikamaru had said that if he really went all out, he might kill someone or even injure them for life. He could hold back. But Anbu was just asking for trouble. It was hard to half-heartedly fight an Anbu ninja, and even then it depended on who it was. If Danzo had his pick it could get dangerous because all of Danzo's men were taught to fight with intent to kill. Shikaru's choice, no doubt that would be a pain of strategic battle of the minds. And Yuzuka, Aburam, Akimichi would just be annoying in his own preference. I accept. His blue eye held no more mirth, he knew when to take things seriously. Sarutobi nodded as he began to take his seat, but before he could, I do recall telling you my position and strength from where I come from, Naruto said, and the elders looked at each other in wonder, they all remembered. If this particular battle becomes, as my favorite Nara would call it, troublesome. I won't be a fault for the environmental damages, right? Ahahaha. Everyone turned in shock, especially Shikaku who had never seen such a thing in his life, his father laughing boisterously. The man was bent over the table slapping it hysterically, and he didn't know why no one else found it just as funny. The kid was basically saying, if you give me a tough opponent, I'm gonna tear this tower up. Shikaru wiped a tear from his eye and tried to contain himself. Do as you please, I want to see this to the end. Naruto smiled back at the man who understood him best. Alright then. Sarutobi nodded and continued to sit, glancing back at the Chunin who understood the signal and raised the black flag. Man, I wonder who the opponent's gonna be. Obito smiled, Naruto was one interesting fighter, and he couldn't help but watching with interest. Without a doubt someone remarkably skilled and dangerous. Kakashi commented, staring at Naruto. He wasn't sure if he was worried or not, but he wished they didn't have to test him like this, it seemed unfair. Well then, off I go. Both students whipped their head to their teacher who stretched out his arms before he walked forward. If the last fight had been intense, this was going to be even more so. Naruto groaned, he should have guessed. He knew that his father had been a part of Anbu in the past, but he didn't think that the man would be his opponent. Figures he would be, probably payback for not letting him in his head. Naruto, as I've said before, you've by far proven yourself to be who you said you were. Naruto glared at his predecessor, taking a step back and giving them more space. I'm truly impressed by your skill even now. Minato's blue eyes seemed to harder. So let's not hold back. Hold back? Did he think that was going to be possible? During the war when the fourth Hokage had been reincarnated, he had been a pain in the ass, now he had to face him while he was living. Damn it. The black flag raised again in seemingly slow motion and both moved instantaneously. Shadow Clone Jutsu. Flying Thunder God technique. In a split second the roof was covered in triple-pronged kunai bearing the teleportation seals. Minato watched the boy with his two additional clones, there was no escape. Kakashi's mouth dropped. He had seen his teacher's technique. With every area marked, there was no way that Naruto could win, he'd be thrown around like a rag doll. King cheat. Shikaku had begun to learn that when Naruto started to curse that he was feeling intense emotions, and you could tell from the way he clenched his fist, it was anger. I said let's not hold back, did you think I was lying? Minato said mockingly, and the smile on Naruto's was anything but humor. You bastard, if you think putting these SH-tie seals down will help you. Naruto pulled a kunai up from the ground, making Minato frown. Have the FCK added. A quick teleport and he was right in front of Naruto, but one of the clones read the move and slashed at his back, making Minato teleport back, but Naruto refused to let him escape. With ungodly speed Naruto breached the distance, and kunai clashed. Minato flinched, no wonder the Hyuga was down after a couple of hits, even with his small size, Naruto was heavy-handed. He teleported away again. Naruto didn't fight like a ninja, Minato decided. He was more savage, close combat and desperate. His taijutsu style was strange and unpredictable, and he wondered who on earth his teachers could have been. But he didn't have time to think as Naruto rushed him again. The Thunder God technique was good in the sense it could be used as defense when he needed distance, but that didn't matter to an opponent like Naruto who was dangerously fast and didn't care about running around chasing him. Fine then. Shadow Clone. Two other clones appeared and Naruto stopped as if contemplating what the man was up to. But the clones teleported surrounding him, and if the wide eyes were anything to go by, he was shocked. His clones took the hit and he growled, jumping back. Shadow clone jutsu. What the? Obito said as he went to his feet. Since when could someone make that many clones? On the roof had to be at least 100, and Minato had to be surprised too, but the fight started before he could show it. 100 versus 2 using flying thunder. It was impressive and soon all the clones dissipated, no one exactly sure who had taken out who. And there Minato stood calmly with his eyes closed and Naruto stood watching and waiting. That's. Shikaku jumped and Kakashi and Obito looked at the man for answers. What is that? Kakashi asked boldly. Shikaku frowned. That's Sage mode. A Sannin level technique, but when did Minato learn it? Sannin level. That's who was training them every day and a feeling of pride flooded through them. But then Kakashi felt the reality crush him. But that meant Naruto was facing. Everyone watched in awe as the same eye marks appeared over Naruto's, and Kakashi could feel his implanted eye warm as if wanting to join in. So you really can go into Sage mode, Minato said, but Naruto didn't respond. Honestly though, Naruto acted like he disliked the man. He didn't hate his father. He respected him. The man was considered a powerful force by all of those in his generation. He hated that he had died. Hated that he abandoned him on the battlefield. Hated that he had let the Nine Tails kill him and let the future fall to hell, because had he lived he was sure none of what had happened would have, and all that hurt was painful. But he didn't have the opportunity to bathe in it. When you see your father, ignore him. What? Shikamaru clearly wasn't eating enough if he was talking such foolishness. Of course if he saw his father. Your father and mother don't need you. It's not their past we're changing. I don't care if you have to hate them if they hate you. Stay focused or everything will repeat. So he had to pretend they weren't important. Even if he wanted to run into his mother's arms and tell her he loved her. Or hug his dad and tell him all the things he accomplished, because Shika knew then that if he did, he'd never leave their side. Minato headed right for him and they clashed. The force of the blows could be felt on the sidelines, and the audience cringed. Despite the height difference they fought remarkably evenly, though that was only what it looked like. Minato frowned. He could feel Sage slipping away. He hadn't prepared for it that long, but he could still feel the steady hit from Naruto. The kid wasn't slowing. Minato teleported back just as the Sage faded and summoned 2 clones that charged straight toward Naruto. He knew that they wouldn't be able to last long with Naruto using. Naruto's eyeshadow faded, and where everyone thought that it was a natural fade, Minato could see the cheeky smile that said otherwise. Damn brat. Naruto summoned another large amount of shadow clones to meet with Minato's fast ones. Anything you can do I can do better. That's what Naruto was doing. Minato could see it in his childish eye. Speed versus speed, clone versus clone, sage versus sage. Minato gathered the chakra in his hand, molding it with precision. The kid was a prankster, that much was obvious, but like he had said in the beginning, there was no need to hold back. The clones moved fast thanks to the Thunder God technique, and Naruto was having trouble keeping up. Maybe if he used less clones like he had in the first place that might have helped. Now he was trapped in a wave of himself, and he wasn't ready to dispel them just yet, though he still needed to get out. One of Minato's clones appeared in front of him, and he had a few options, but he really hated thinking too much. Lifting his arms he prepared for the kick that shot him out of the mess of the fight and further back. It wasn't a light kick either, but let's face it was no Tsunade Sakura and it was something he could handle, plus he still had to prepare. If his dad was as smart as he knew he was either catching on or caught on to Naruto's game and was going to do something bigger. Shikaku watched in horror as blue spiral chakra appeared in Minato's hand. That was Minato's infamous jutsu that he had created himself and spent 3 years making. It was a powerhouse with amazing destructive power, and he wanted to use it here. The last few clones dissipated and Minato moved in a flash. Naruto. Naruto turned in that moment and caught a glimpse of the jutsu Minato stretched out. With self-preserving reflexes, Naruto grasped Minato's wrist and attempted to stop it from reaching the target. Minato was surprised that Naruto had moved so quickly and had even stopped him, but if he thought that was enough, he was being severely underestimated. And Naruto was growling, trying to keep the attack away as the chakra licked at his skin, ready to throw him into oblivion. Damn, his dad was merciless. Minato could feel the strain and with a bit more chakra and strength pushed through Naruto's trembling grip. Rasengan. Sarutobi jumped up as concrete dirt rose. Had he won? Did Naruto lose? What happened? The breeze passed by carrying the dust with it, and many of the elders gasped, for there in the middle of the roof was a wide-eyed Minato looking at a small indentation on the ground, but no body. Minato's head jerked up as he turned to search for his opponent. Naruto in an instant had directed his hand down and disappeared due to the force. He knew how to handle the Rasengan, and that had surprised him. He was lucky that the Hokage's roof was the perfect place for a spar. The building was not an ordinary one, each brick was lined with chakra and seals to keep it standing, no matter what destruction befell. Had it been anywhere else he was sure it would not have just left an indent. But a flash of gold made him look up to see a small child wearing that plain white shirt and black shorts falling. He landed on the elder's table, which caused enough shock as it was. Minato glared at the smile on his face, so they used the Rasengan in the future, huh? No holding back, huh? Minato watched as 2 clones appeared and he wondered if he was going to be thrown into a clone war again. It's a good thing you're fast though. Minato's mouth dropped as the chakra started once into a familiar shape and then into something more intricate. "Can't have you dying here." Minato watched a small child leap into the air in awe, spinning with a jutsu that he had never couldn't seem to perfect and yet, there it was. It was in that moment that Minato realized, I have to move. He had been staring in awe at seeing a fully completed Rasengan that he forgot that it was aimed at him, and just when he was going to teleport he realized another fact. The seals were broken. The damn brat hadn't just called a bunch of clones to show off, he had been destroying many of the outer radius seals, preventing him from teleporting too far and keeping him in range. Racing. Minato was just going to manually have to get out of range with his natural speed. He stepped back to prepare and sunk. Huh? He looked down to see his foot had slipped into a hole. A hole. A hole. When had this hole gotten there? When did this happen? He tried to shake his foot out, but it was really stuck. Why on earth was there random? Wasn't this where Naruto easily ended his first battle? This was also the place that one of those windmill shuriken fell. The place that he had tripped in the Hyuga fight. Minato looked up at a knowing impish smile. He had planned this from the beginning. Rasen shuriken. No one had ever seen a jutsu be thrown or a jutsu that looked like that. It had started off like Minato's own, but then changed into something more fierce. The chakra hit the rooftop, and a split second later it burst. A high frequency was heard, but the power of the jutsu made even the elders jump back, covering their faces from debris. Only the Hyugas and Uchihas could truly understand and see the molecular damage that the jutsu was capable of and how terrifying it was. After a good 2 minutes the dust and shock began to fade. Minato? Where is Minato? Sarutobi yelled. Had he known that the calm child standing to the side was capable of this power, he would have never allowed his successor to volunteer. There was a noticeable hole that went through the roof into the building. A building that should last until hell froze over was easily broken by one jutsu. I'm here. Everyone jumped, especially Hisashi, who didn't even know when the man had gotten behind him. Sarutobi sighed in relief. He had a kunai in his hand and was unscathed of victory indeed, but Minato's face held no such revelation. Instead it was hardened as it looked at the child who was casually cracking his neck. I concede. Minato said, and no one argued with him. No one said that he had gotten away uninjured, so surely he could still fight. No one said a word because they knew if it continued it would not end well. Looks like I win then, believe it. Naruto smiled. It took a bit of time for everyone to recover, and within that time Naruto had long since dismissed himself with Shikaku following behind. And though Kakashi wanted to say something, he couldn't think of anything. Instead he watched a mysterious boy walk away in conversation. You didn't tell me you could use a jutsu like that. Well, I don't have a lot of confidence that if I used it with you, you'd make it out alive. Still, you could have told me. Well, how about I tell you how inconvenient not have a left eye is? Do you know how many times that guy tried to exploit it? I'll figure something out. And off the pair disappeared without waiting for anyone. And there was no one to say anything anyway after a fight like that. Minato sighed as he picked up a wayward kunai, flippantly looking it over, and Obito finally, after being stunned speechless, recovered. Teacher? Minato turned to his smiling student and the one brooding next to him and walked toward them. The Hyuga, Hisashi was it? Started walking toward them as well. That was amazing. I've never seen you go. What was that cool thing? Nara said. Sage mode, a Sannin level technique. Kakashi said with his arms crossed. Obito beamed. Yay. That was awesome. I still think you could have won, but I would not. All 3 males looked at the man they knew would be Hokage one day. There was no way I would have won. I was set up from the start. Obito looked at Kakashi but received no hint of what their teacher meant. Even Hisashi was confused. Minato smiled. Well, this is as good as a teaching moment as ever, I suppose. Minato looked back at the broken battlefield that they had just fought on. From even before the fight began, Naruto has probably been plotting. Everyone listened, even the elders stopped their chatting to listen. He probably knew he could defeat all the way up to Jounin easily, so he had to choose the best way to do it. Didn't mean to frighten you, scaredy cat. He defeated his opponents with defensive maneuvers and speed, utilizing chakra-controlled strength. So that's why it hurt so much. Obito grumbled, rubbing his arm, and even Hisashi reflectively rubbed his still aching cheek. However, he kept his ninjutsu abilities hidden and didn't even reveal his full level of taijutsu. Ah. Like how he kept getting faster in each fight. Minato smiled. Exactly, he was showing the bare minimum so that anything he used in the final fight would throw his opponent off guard. But in that logic, wouldn't he have wanted to finish every fight quickly and efficiently? With the Hyuga he even got injured. Minato nodded. I think the Hyuga fight was a bit more personal to him, that's why the time limit didn't matter. However, even in the Hyuga fight, Naruto still refrained from using any techniques. They all thought about it, recalling the British boxer way of fighting he had shown. Still, I don't get how he set you up. Obito said with a crinkled brow. Minato nodded. Then let's focus on my fight. After hoping to seal his movements with the Thunder God technique, what did Naruto do? He created 2 additional clones. Hisashi answered, also wanting to know the answer. Exactly, and why do you think he did that? Kakashi looked down, replaying the scene. Even with his speed it would be hard to attack and defend, so the clones were the perfect amount to cover him. Of course the prodigy would know. Yes, not to mention I was being a little mean and tried to get in from his left side often, but the other clones covered any blind spots he had. Then what next? He matched you. Clone versus clone, sage versus sage. Kakashi said. Minato frowned as he looked back at the damage. Yes, that's what I thought as well. You mean he wasn't? Minato flinched at Obito's abrasiveness. At first I had thought that, and maybe he was thinking that mildly, but matching me strike for strike was not his original goal, it was all a diversion. He overwhelmed me with shock and confusion by the large amount because I hadn't known him capable of creating so many. Cause he was hiding it. Kakashi followed. Yes, but because of that I assumed the dispelling of his sage and creating of the large amount of clones the second time was to show off again, but now I realize how wrong I was. Simply look at it from this angle. After we ended Sage Mode I summoned 2 clones, but Naruto once again summoned about 100. Why? To overwhelm you, right? Minato watched the gears in Kakashi's head turning tirelessly as he ignored Obito's statement, but 100 clones would be too much. He could have just used 3 or 5 and it would have been easier to maneuver. With 100 clones it was clearly too tight, you even hit him, right? Minato nodded, and this is where the plan comes in, because though I did hit Naruto, it was only because he wanted me to. Hisashi thought back to his fight. After watching that last fight he was sure that Naruto could have defeated him easily without getting hit, but he hadn't. So let me explain everything now. Naruto set up precedents in the beginning to make me think he was matching me. He knew that by doing so I would have to do something I knew he couldn't match, namely my Rasengan. So he taunted he and attempted to force my hand. I didn't have to fall into his pace, but because I was not aware of his full abilities, I got stuck in the mindset that he was showing off when actually those clones were boxing me in. Boxing? Hisashi raised a brow. They weren't just fending off my clones, they were breaking my Thunder God seals. Obito and Kakashi's mouth dropped as their teacher held out a kunai he had picked up, the seal cut and broken. Naruto used a large amount of clones to break off the outer kunai seals in order to seal me in the radius he wanted, then he showed me his technique. Everyone recalled the blue orb of condensed chakra. The high frequency it gave off, the power it released, that was no simple jutsu. Minato had been trying endlessly to complete that jutsu, to add his affinity to it, but no matter what he did it always failed, and there it was. Being held in his hand like it was a normal technique and not the S-class one that it was. But you got away. Obito muttered. Minato sighed. Actually I got stuck. There was a grove in the ground that had steadily gotten bigger throughout every fight and my foot had gotten stuck in it. I had spent too much time in awe of Naruto's techniques that I hadn't noticed he had broken my seals, and by the time I had gotten stuck, honestly it would have been the end of me. Kakashi couldn't tell who he was rooting for. Surely his teacher would be an appropriate choice because he knew his level of skills and respected him, but Naruto, the man, was slowly toppling everything he knew. Naruto sometimes seemed childish and then old, but clearly he was a genius in his own right. But you still got away. Obito said. He got it, Naruto was awesome, but still. The fact was, even though Minato said he would have lost, he had gotten away from the attack unharmed. Naruto clearly hadn't trapped Minato as well as he thought. That was all Naruto's decision, because you have to remember something even I forgot in the midst of battle. Naruto wasn't fighting just for the sake of winning, he was simply proving that he was strong. If that attack had landed, while I'm not entirely sure what would have, it would have ended you. They looked to Hisashi's downcast eyes. Million of chakra strikes. Oh. You mean those pin things? Kakashi didn't have the eyes to see what they had seen and tried to understand. More fine and much more precise than any Hyuga chakra strike to your system. Even if the attack didn't paralyze you, you would never be able to use chakra again. Silence fell over them at the critical information. I see. In any case, Naruto was not out for blood, so he gave me one way out. Everyone thought back to how Minato appeared behind Hisashi. Naruto essentially told me that either I bite back my pride and take the path he laid for me or fall. But wait. You got out thanks to your Thunder God technique. What does that have to do with Naruto? Obito yelled. Kakashi tried to think. How could Naruto have helped teacher? How did he give him a way out? When had he even had a? When you hit him. Minato smiled, but Obito was still confused. There was one time during the fight where Minato landed a solid hit on Naruto. We assumed it was carelessness and bad decision making, but what if he wanted to get hit? What if the hit was his opportunity to take teacher's kunai and put it in a safe distance where he wouldn't be in range? Obito was catching up, but one thing still bothered him. But wait, wouldn't teacher know that his seal had been moved? Surely he would know while Naruto was doing that. Not if he had disrupted the seal. If the seal had been shut out for at least 2 minutes that I was aware of, it would not have it registered among my arsenal. The other elders were walking closer, having heard everything as well. But after he summoned his second multitude of clones, he didn't have that 2-minute time limit to move the kunai under the radar. As Ashi said, he had gone through the theory and he still couldn't see it. There was only one time where Naruto picked up a kunai that we are aware of that would have given him enough time for that limit, Shikamaru said with a smile. Minato could see that he understood everything at this point. You bastard, if you think putting these SH-tie seals down will help you. Eyes widened. The very beginning. Naruto had initially picked up a kunai if he disrupted the seal with his chakra at that point. No one would have thought twice because he had seemed so angry, but now it seemed like it was all a ploy. All he would have to do was simply remove his chakra from the seal so that Minato could use it again. In that moment,